A new sunrise washed over Veyron, but Aurelis House was already wide awake long before the city stirred. Inside the office, ledgers, herbs, Lumisilk bottles, and shipping crates filled every corner with quiet purpose. Standing at the center, Jihan felt the weight of everything they had built together. Then the system appeared once more, revealing the next stage of the infinite space portal. The requirements were far greater than anything he had faced before. High-density mana stones and a rare space-attuned crystal hidden within unstable ruins would be needed. In return, the system promised an expanded production domain with automated workstations. To Jihan, it wasn't just another upgrade, it was the foundation of a true manufacturing empire. Before he could think further, Myrrel arrived carrying 3 important reports. One came from Baroness Evelyn, another from Professor Julien at the Royal Academy. The final request had traveled through official merchant guild channels on behalf of Princess Avellini. Each document opened another door for Aurelis House. As they reviewed the delivery schedule together, business briefly gave way to silence. Their hands paused only a breath apart above the open ledger. Neither of them spoke, yet neither hurried to move away. Sometimes the quietest moments revealed the most. Naturally, Sora noticed everything. She cheerfully asked whether she had interrupted logistics or something much more dangerous. Myrrel immediately denied the accusation, while Jihan calmly observed that logistics could be surprisingly emotional. The laughter that followed eased the tension before work resumed. The light-hearted mood faded when Clara arrived from the Merchant Guild. Royal deliveries now required protected transport beyond Veyron because closed-eye activity still lingered outside regular patrols. Jihan immediately understood the first expansion shipment would also become an escort mission. Success would depend on far more than good products. Clara unfolded a detailed trade map across the desk. Every road eventually pointed toward Luthmir, the river gateway connecting Veyron to the capital. If Aurelis House established itself there, future expansion would become dramatically easier. The next destination had quietly chosen itself. Myrrel immediately objected to one part of the plan. She insisted the founder couldn't personally risk every dangerous shipment. Jihan answered that this delivery was too important to trust entirely to strangers. Without hesitation, Myrrel declared she would accompany him, leaving the entire room speechless. Meeting his eyes without hesitation, Myrrel reminded him of something he had once taught her. The freedom to choose meant nothing unless she was allowed to use it. For perhaps the first time, Jihan found himself completely out of arguments. Watching nearby, Clara smiled at Myrrel's quiet victory. Preparations began immediately. Ria accepted responsibility for protecting the caravan while Sora volunteered as messenger and runner. Leora would monitor every product throughout the journey, while trusted staff remained behind to manage Aurelis House. Every role fit together like another carefully planned piece of the company. At the Adventurer Guild, Jihan posted an escort request under his own name. The generous reward drew Iron Rank adventurers almost immediately. Even Arya admitted it was unusual to see a company founder hiring himself as part of the escort. Jihan simply smiled. Some journeys were too important to leave entirely in someone else's hands. Before the discussion could continue, a familiar voice called his name. Lyra Ven stepped into the guild wearing a travel cloak instead of noble attire. Her bright smile revealed she was genuinely happy to see him again. Jihan welcomed her just as warmly, surprised by how naturally the reunion felt. Lyra joked that Jihan had become famous far faster than she expected. He answered that he had simply followed the road she first helped him discover. The sincere compliment caught her completely off guard. Across the room, Myrrel quietly buried her reaction behind a perfectly calm expression. Another familiar figure appeared moments later. Leaning casually against the doorway, Celine announced that the Warrior Guild had been tracking closed-eye activity near the Luthmir wetlands. She intended to join the mission unofficially with Garen's approval. Her playful smile suggested she expected the journey to become interesting. The introductions created an atmosphere no one could quite ignore. Lyra politely studied Celine while Miral silently observed them both. Celine noticed everything and seemed to enjoy every awkward second of it. Jihan pretended not to notice, though his enhanced senses missed absolutely nothing. Soon afterward, Kale Voss approached with a straightforward request. He wanted to join the escort because stronger roads meant stronger opponents and greater opportunities to improve. His calm discipline had already earned Jihan's respect. Accepting him was an easy decision. From behind a nearby table, a small hooded scout quietly raised one hand. Known as NYM, the seemingly harmless adventurer had earned an iron rank through exceptional trap detection. Arya introduced the scout with a smile before NYM asked the question everyone secretly appreciated. Was food included in the contract? The following morning, wagons gathered outside Veyron's western gate beneath the rising sun. Every Aurelis crate bore official batch numbers and merchant guild seals. Alongside them waited Lyra's merchant wagon loaded with trade goods destined for Luthmir. After Rhea completed one final inspection, the caravan finally rolled toward its next adventure. As the caravan settled into its rhythm, Jihan chose to walk beside the lead wagon instead of riding in comfort. Lyra joined him, sharing the unwritten rules of the Luthmir trade route that no map could ever capture. She pointed out honest inns, corrupt toll keepers, and merchants whose handshakes mattered more than contracts. Jihan listened carefully, realizing experience often revealed truths that books never could. From the second wagon, Miral quietly watched the conversation unfold. She knew they were discussing business, yet the effortless warmth between them stirred emotions she struggled to explain. Sora noticed immediately and offered her dried fruit with a mischievous grin. Miral insisted she was only monitoring team efficiency, earning a smile from everyone except herself. Celine appeared beside Miral so silently that even the ledger nearly slipped from her hands. With a teasing smile, she observed that Jihan attracted danger, wealth, and admirers with equal consistency. Miral tried to dismiss the comment, but her reaction betrayed more than her words. Celine laughed softly, delighted by how easy it was to disturb the accountant's perfect composure. Before sunset, the caravan reached Windfall Orchard and prepared its first camp. Rhea organized the guards while Kale quietly practiced beneath an old apple tree. Leora inspected every crate to ensure the Lumisilk products remained perfectly stable during transport. Even during moments of rest, Aurelis House never stopped preparing for tomorrow. Night transformed the campfire into the heart of the expedition. Lyra shared fruit cakes from the Ven caravan while stories replaced business for a little while. Sora exaggerated Jihan's past adventures until they sounded almost mythical. Each time, Miral corrected the details, and the laughter grew even louder. Later, Jihan found Miral alone beneath the moonlight, still reviewing tomorrow's records. He gently suggested she rest, but she quietly admitted she feared becoming useless if she ever stopped working. Jihan reminded her that her value had never been measured by ledgers alone. For a moment, the weight she carried seemed just a little lighter. Miral finally asked the question that had lived quietly in her heart. Why did Jihan continue treating her as a person when so much of the world had treated her as property? He answered simply that people were never tools, no matter what society decided to believe. Before she could respond, a distant howl echoed from the surrounding forest. The peaceful night shattered as a pack of night wolves emerged from the darkness. Rhea immediately called the formation while Kale drew his blade with practiced calm. Celine disappeared into the trees, already hunting the pack from another direction. In an instant, the quiet camp became a battlefield. The wolves rushed straight for the cargo wagons instead of the guards. Jihan took the center while Kale secured the left flank and Rhea anchored the right. High above them, NYM climbed onto a wagon roof and began disrupting the pack's advance. Every defender moved as though they had trained together for years. One wolf slipped through the formation and charged toward Lyra's wagon. She raised a small merchant's dagger even as her hands trembled with fear. Just before the beast reached her, Jihan stepped through a tiny portal and intercepted its attack. The rescue happened so quickly that Lyra barely understood what she had witnessed. With a single decisive strike, Jihan ended the immediate danger. Still shaken, Lyra could only stare as he calmly asked whether she had been injured. She managed a quiet shake of her head, unable to hide the relief in her eyes. For Jihan, however, the battle had only just begun. Elsewhere in the forest, Celestine tracked the pack leader through the shadows. The level 10 Night Wolf Alpha matched her speed with surprising cunning. Rather than retreat, Celestine welcomed the challenge with an eager smile. At last, she had found an opponent worthy of her full attention. Jihan arrived just as the Alpha launched another attack. Using his timing perfectly, he created the opening Celestine needed to strike its weakened leg. Their movements flowed together with effortless precision despite almost no spoken coordination. Watching them fight felt less like chance and more like trust forged through countless battles. Jihan warned Celestine not to let confidence become carelessness. She answered that dangerous moments always revealed the most honest thoughts. Together they forced the Alpha steadily backward through the trees. From the camp, Sora whispered that the real battle seemed to involve far more than monsters. The Alpha gathered itself for one desperate final charge. Jihan disrupted its balance with a precisely placed portal beneath its front paw. Celestine seized the opening without hesitation. Together they brought the hunt to its decisive end. As the battlefield fell silent, Jihan collected the Alpha's mana stone. The system absorbed part of its energy, quietly advancing the next stage of his growth. A new message confirmed that stronger monsters were accelerating the portal's development. The dangerous road ahead had suddenly become an opportunity as well. Peace gradually returned to the campsite. Lyra quietly thanked Jihan for saving her life while Celestine reminded him that their unfinished duel still remained. Nearby, Miral silently wrapped a small bandage around the cut on his arm. None of them said much, yet every gesture revealed how deeply they had come to trust one another. At first light, the caravan reached the edge of the mist-covered Luthmere wetlands. Strange blue lights flickered between the reeds as silence settled over the ancient marsh. NYM discovered a broken closed-eye token half buried in the mud, confirming they were not the first to pass this way. In the distance, morning mist blanketed the Luthmere wetlands like a silent sea as the caravan paused before the flooded road. Blue lights drifted between towering reeds while everyone studied the broken closed-eye token NYM had recovered. Then Jihan's system reacted, quietly confirming that a space-attuned crystal was somewhere nearby. The journey had suddenly become far more important than a simple delivery. No one rushed to answer the discovery. Rhea argued for caution, Lyra worried about the time-sensitive cargo, and Miral reminded everyone that Aurelis House still had obligations waiting in Luthmere. Jihan listened to every viewpoint before making his decision. Balancing profit, safety, and opportunity had become part of who he was. The caravan remained on high ground while preparations began. Rhea established a defensive perimeter as Leora inspected the cargo and Sora organized emergency messages. Kale and Celestine volunteered to scout the mysterious ruins beside Jihan. No one treated the wetlands lightly. Jihan warned that the ruins could hide monsters, unstable space magic, or closed-eye traps. Miral quietly answered that the future of Aurelis House depended on understanding the same risks he faced. Seeing the determination in her eyes, Jihan realized there was no point arguing further. Some decisions had already been made. Just before the scouting party departed, Lyra caught up with Jihan. She handed him a small Ven travel charm and wished him a safe return. He accepted it with sincere gratitude. For a brief moment, her fingers lingered before she finally let go. As they disappeared into the mist, Celine noticed the charm immediately. With a grin, she asked whether Jihan intended to collect trading partners or broken hearts. He replied that mana stones and trade routes were already keeping him busy enough. Even in dangerous places, the journey somehow found room for laughter. A calm voice echoed through the wetlands before a young guide stepped from the reeds. Maris Reed introduced herself with the confidence of someone who knew every hidden path in the swamp. Her first warning was simple: very few travelers who chased the tower ever returned. The expedition had gained a guide, and another mystery. Maris studied the group carefully before naming her price. To her surprise, Jihan accepted without bargaining. Most outsiders argued over every coin, but he respected local knowledge too much to waste time. For the first time, Maris looked at the visitors with genuine curiosity. As they walked, Maris shared the legend of Crooked Moon Tower. After a violent space storm decades earlier, the ruin had begun appearing in different places across the wetlands. Some nights its windows glowed despite standing completely abandoned. The story only deepened the mystery surrounding the crystal. Their conversation was interrupted by another figure emerging from the marsh. A weathered ranger named Aaron Pike greeted them with a drawn bow before Maris convinced him to lower it. Even then, he warned that ghosts were far less dangerous than foolish decisions. His experience carried the weight of hard-earned survival. Everything changed when Aaron heard about the closed-eye token. He revealed that hooded strangers had been buying ancient maps before several local guides vanished without a trace. The broken token in NYM's hand connected every rumor into a single pattern. The enemy had reached the wetlands before them. Following Maris, the group crossed narrow paths suspended above dark water. Every step was tested before the next traveler moved. NYM searched for traps while Kale guarded the rear and Miral quietly mapped each landmark. If the wetlands shifted, they intended to find their way back. The marsh almost claimed Miral without warning. Jihan caught her wrist just before unstable ground swallowed her footing. For a heartbeat neither moved. Then he gently reminded her to stay close until the danger had passed. Blue lights drifted lazily through the reeds like harmless lanterns. Maris immediately warned everyone never to follow them. As one light floated closer, it briefly became the familiar street where Jihan's previous life had ended. The wetlands were beginning to test more than their courage. For a single heartbeat, soul returned. Jihan heard the truck horn, saw the crosswalk, and felt old memories closing around him. He forced himself back to the present before the illusion could take hold. Some wounds belonged to the heart rather than the body. A gentle touch on his sleeve broke the illusion completely. Miral's voice pulled him back as the city dissolved into drifting blue sparks. He thanked her with nothing more than a quiet look. Sometimes understanding needed no words. The peace shattered when something enormous moved beneath the black water. Maris raised her spear as a level 11 Mirejaw crocodile burst from the swamp. Its jaws crashed toward the group with terrifying force. The wetlands had finally revealed their first true guardian. Kale barely stopped the creature's first bite before Jihan shifted its attack with a tiny portal. Celine struck across its eye ridge while Maris drove her spear into its flank. Within moments, everyone found their rhythm against the swamp predator. The real battle for Crooked Moon Tower had begun. The muddy path grew more treacherous with every step as the wounded crocodile fought to drag the battle into deeper water. Jihan quickly realized that one careless move could cost someone their footing as well as their life. He ordered everyone to strike only when the beast lifted its head above the bank. Following his lead, Aaron's arrows found the softer scales beneath its jaw. While the others kept the creature occupied, Miral searched for a pattern instead of an opening. She noticed the Mirejaw always lunged toward the loudest sound before attacking. A single metal buckle thrown against a nearby stone redirected its attention. For one perfect moment, the monster exposed the vulnerable line along its neck. Jihan seized the opportunity without hesitation. Using a short portal step, he appeared above the exposed neck before the beast could react. One decisive strike ended the struggle as the swamp slowly swallowed the fading remains. Silence returned to the wetlands as if the battle had never happened. From the fading mana, Jihan recovered the level 11 mana stone. The system absorbed part of its energy and quietly advanced the infinite space portal once again. The glowing icon shone a little brighter than before. Every dangerous encounter was bringing the next breakthrough within reach. Just as the group prepared to move on, a haunting melody drifted across the mist. A woman with pale blue hair stood waiting on the remains of an ancient stone bridge. Seris lowered her voice and introduced her as Vale Mistborn, the wetland's mysterious oracle. Instead of surprise, Vale greeted Jihan as though she had expected him all along. Vale revealed that Crooked Moon Tower was far older than anyone realized. It had once served as a space anchor built by a forgotten civilization. The crystal hidden within kept unstable regions of the world from collapsing into chaos. Yesterday, the closed eye had disturbed that fragile balance. Aaron argued that entering the tower now bordered on madness. Seris quietly answered that abandoning it might doom every nearby village instead. Miral added that protecting the trade route also meant protecting the people who depended on it. Jihan made his choice. They would enter the tower, recover the crystal, and stop the closed eye. Crooked Moon Tower leaned across the marsh at an impossible angle, defying every law of nature. Moon-shaped runes shimmered across its dark stone walls while the doorway opened into endless darkness. NYM tossed a pebble through the entrance. Instead of echoing ahead, the sound returned from somewhere behind them. The interior was even stranger than the legends had promised. Hallways stretched farther than the tower's outer walls should have allowed, while floating staircases twisted through impossible space. Doors revealed fragments of distant skies and forgotten places. Jihan felt his portal ability resonate with the ruin itself. Without warning, the hallway fractured into 3 glowing paths. Jihan instinctively caught Miral's hand before space shifted around them. Celine and Kale vanished into the left passage, while Seris, Aaron, and NYM disappeared to the right. The tower had separated them according to its own mysterious design. Jihan and Miral emerged inside a silent chamber filled with floating bookshelves. There was no doorway behind them, only endless shelves drifting through empty space. Only then did they realize they were still holding hands. Embarrassed smiles replaced words as they slowly let go. The books contained no writing at all. Instead, each page displayed vivid memories drawn from whoever looked upon it. Jihan saw scenes from his life in Korea, while Miral faced memories she had spent years trying to forget. The tower wasn't testing knowledge, it was testing the truth hidden inside their hearts. For the first time, Miral witnessed the accident that had stolen Jihan's previous life. At the same moment, Jihan saw the loneliness of her past through memories of chains and captivity. Neither tried to explain what they had seen. Some pain became easier to understand simply by being witnessed. Breaking the silence, Jihan admitted he could never erase the past. What he could build was a future where fewer people were crushed by broken systems. Miral finally allowed herself to believe in that dream. She quietly promised she wanted to protect it alongside him. Elsewhere inside the tower, Celine and Kale found themselves facing opponents unlike any they had fought before. Mirror-like reflections copied every movement with unsettling precision. Rather than panic, Celine laughed while Kale calmly studied each familiar technique. The tower was measuring who they truly were through combat. On another path, Seris, Aaron, and NYM confronted a maze of hidden mechanisms. Pressure plates, collapsing floors, and spinning blades guarded every corridor. Working together, they crossed each obstacle through experience, patience, and careful timing. Even the tower seemed forced to acknowledge their determination. At last, the separated paths converged inside a vast circular chamber. Closed-eye agents surrounded a floating silver-blue crystal while a frightened young alchemist named June Bell was forced to carve glowing runes. Each pulse from the crystal twisted the chamber itself. Jihan immediately understood they had arrived at the heart of the crisis. The closed-eye captain ordered June to shatter the space-attuned crystal despite the obvious danger. Desperate, June warned that breaking it would collapse both the tower and the surrounding wetlands. Stepping from the shadows, Jihan calmly drew his sword. At that exact The heart of Crooked Moon Tower stood frozen in eerie silence as the floating space-attuned crystal illuminated the shattered chamber. Around it, closed-eye agents formed a tight circle, guarding the relic that had lured Jihan into their trap. Nearby, the young alchemist June Bell trembled beside the ritual markings, knowing exactly how fragile the situation had become. Then Jihan stepped from the shadows, and the enemy captain greeted him with the smile of someone convinced the hunt was finally over. Without another word, the enemy commander lowered his hood and revealed the face hidden beneath it. His pale gray hair, black eye, and military bearing made him look more like a decorated officer than a criminal. Introducing himself as Captain Rowan Thale, he proudly claimed command over the Closed Eye's entire wetland operation. Celine's expression hardened immediately. She had seen that name too many times in Warrior Guild wanted reports. Rowan raised his sword, making it clear this meeting had never been a negotiation. Lord Varric Noct, he explained, wanted the young wielder of spatial magic captured alive at any cost. Even the crystal itself had been left here as bait, knowing Jihan's growing power would inevitably lead him to it. As if confirming Rowan's words, Jihan's system continued flashing the same urgent requirement before his eyes. June gathered his courage and revealed the truth no one else in the chamber understood. The floating crystal wasn't merely valuable, it was the force keeping the tower from collapsing into unstable space. Removing it carelessly could tear apart both the ruin and the wetlands surrounding it. Without wasting a second, Myrrell carefully recorded every warning, already treating knowledge as their greatest weapon. Rowan answered the revelation with a single command. Crossbows shifted toward Myrrell, Maris, and June, making it painfully clear who the enemy considered most valuable. Kale stepped between June and the nearest threat without the slightest hesitation. Beside him, Celine slowly twirled her blades, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Rather than reacting immediately, Jihan calmly surveyed the chamber. Every distance, every hostage, every unstable wall, and every possible escape route became another piece of a larger calculation. When the silence grew almost unbearable, he smiled with the confidence of a seasoned merchant rejecting a terrible bargain. His answer left the room speechless. The offer simply wasn't worth accepting. The battle erupted as closed-eye agents charged from both sides of the chamber. Kale met the first assault with disciplined precision, refusing to give the enemy a single easy step. Celine slipped behind another pair of attackers, ending their assault almost before they realized she had moved. Even as he fought, Jihan found himself wishing Ria's dependable shield had been there beside them. Amid the confusion, one assassin rushed toward June, determined to silence the only witness who understood the crystal. Myrrell reacted first, hurling an ink bottle that shattered across the attacker's face. The brief distraction gave Kale exactly the opening he needed to drive the enemy back. June stared at Myrrell in disbelief, realizing someone had risked themselves to protect him. As swords clashed, strange mist seeped through impossible cracks spreading across the chamber floor. Maris disappeared into the fog as naturally as if the wetlands themselves were shielding her. One careless agent stumbled into her hidden reed rope trap. Moments later, Aaron's arrow pinned another enemy in place before he could recover. While the battle raged, NYM focused on something far more dangerous than the attackers. Carefully studying the rune circle without disturbing it, they searched for the tower's hidden secrets. Beneath the visible pattern, false runes had been concealed with remarkable precision. The realization was chilling. The closed eye had prepared the chamber to collapse no matter who claimed victory. For the briefest moment, both sides hesitated. Rowan welcomed the hesitation, knowing every second worked in his favor. His soldiers moved confidently through safe paths they already understood while Jihan's team risked triggering disaster with every step. Only then did Jihan recognize Rowan's true strategy. He had transformed the battlefield itself into a hostage. Instead of trusting the floor beneath him, Jihan trusted space itself. Tiny portals carried each careful step safely across the trapped runes, making his movement appear almost unreal. Watching the technique in actual combat, Rowan's confidence began to crack for the first time. Above them, the crystal answered with an even brighter pulse. Realizing ordinary tactics would no longer be enough, Rowan finally drew his full blade. Its black metal shimmered with sinister runes unlike anything the others had encountered. Every movement revealed the discipline of a former royal swordsman rather than a common outlaw. His opening strike forced Jihan to defend with everything he had. Dark threads of mana spilled from Rowan's sword the instant the blades collided. They twisted around Jihan's weapon, trying to wrench it off balance. A tiny portal appeared beside the clash, quietly swallowing the unnatural pulling force. When the black threads vanished into empty space, even Rowan hesitated. Across the chamber, Celine glanced toward Jihan's duel after defeating another opponent. She immediately recognized that Rowan's relentless pressure was steadily forcing him backward. The playful grin disappeared from her face without a trace. She moved to help, only to find 3 more agents already blocking her path. Celine lowered her stance as calm determination replaced playful confidence. Her twin blades flashed with breathtaking speed through the narrow battlefield. Within moments, the 3 agents were defeated without a single unnecessary strike. Watching from afar, Kale finally understood why the warrior guild spoke her name with such respect. While the duel intensified, Miral noticed the fighting creeping dangerously close to the crystal. She immediately urged June to explain the stabilization runes one step at a time. Years of fear made him hesitate, still expecting punishment for speaking the truth. Miral steadied him with quiet resolve, reminding him that he no longer belonged to the people who had enslaved him. Gathering his courage, June finally revealed the crystal's final safeguard. 3 hidden anchor runes had to be disabled in the correct order before the crystal could ever be moved. One mistake would cause the tower to fold into itself. Miral carefully recorded the sequence before calling NYM over to begin the dangerous task. NYM slipped toward the first hidden anchor rune while the battle raged only a few steps away. Aaron's arrows forced the nearest agents to keep their heads down as Maris exposed invisible trap lines beneath fresh wetland mud. Working with remarkable patience, NYM scraped away the first corrupted rune hidden within the stone. Across the chamber, Miral quietly realized the tower's fate had already begun to change. The instant the first anchor failed, Rowan's calm confidence cracked for the very first time. He drove Jihan backward with a fierce strike while shouting for every agent to stop Miral's group at any cost. Before the order could take effect, Jihan stepped through a portal and returned directly into Rowan's path. The duel became faster, sharper, and far more desperate than before. Steel rang through the chamber as Jihan and Rowan exchanged a relentless series of blows. Rowan's experience gave him cleaner technique, but each clash taught Jihan something new about controlling space itself. Tiny portals quietly erased impossible attack angles by only a few inches. Every adjustment drained precious mana, yet steadily narrowed the gap between them. Above the battlefield, another assassin descended silently toward Miral. Jihan saw the danger immediately, but Rowan refused to let him break away from the duel. Just as the blade seemed certain to strike, the travel charm Lyra had given Jihan burst into brilliant light. For one precious heartbeat, hope arrived before anyone else could. The shimmering barrier stopped the assassin's attack long enough to change everything. Miral stared in disbelief as the protective light surrounded her before fading away. The charm shattered under the impact, but its sacrifice bought Celine the opening she needed. She arrived in an instant and ended the attack with the hilt of her blade. June pointed toward the second anchor hidden beneath the crystal's pedestal. Kale shielded him with unwavering discipline while the frightened alchemist crawled into position. A thrown dagger flashed toward June from across the chamber. Kale calmly knocked it aside, refusing to let fear interrupt the mission. Without warning, the tower twisted as space itself lurched sideways. For several terrifying seconds, walls and ceilings traded places while loose debris drifted through the air. Agents lost their footing as the unstable chamber betrayed friend and foe alike. Anchoring himself through a portal, Jihan rode out the impossible shift without surrendering control. Beyond the collapsing tower, Vela Mistborn's haunting song echoed across the wetlands. Her voice steadied the surrounding mist, slowing the growing distortion threatening the entire region. Blue light settled into a calmer rhythm around the ancient walls. Maris whispered in awe that Vela was carrying the wetlands on her voice alone. Only one anchor remained, hidden beneath the floating crystal itself. Violent currents of warped space guarded the final rune from every direction. Jihan immediately recognized that only his portal ability could safely reach it. Rowan reached the same conclusion and launched his fiercest assault. Dark binding threads exploded from Rowan's sword and coiled around Jihan's arm. Jihan absorbed most of them through a portal, but several runes tightened around his wrist and began draining mana. Rowan smiled, convinced the battle had finally turned in his favor. He proudly declared that Lord Varric would richly reward the capture of a spatial mage. Instead of resisting immediately, Jihan allowed Rowan to believe the trap had succeeded. Only when the enemy relaxed did he create a tiny portal inside the web of binding threads. The unstable mana suddenly reversed direction for a single decisive moment. Rowan's own sword staggered under the backlash of its corrupted power. Celine spotted the opening before anyone else. Her thrown blade forced Rowan into a hurried block that exposed his side for an instant. Jihan needed nothing more than that single mistake. With every ounce of strength he had left, he struck Rowan's cracked rune blade head-on. At the same moment, Jihan opened a portal beneath the crystal pedestal. NYM's carving tool slipped through the opening and emerged directly beneath the final anchor rune. Following Miral's precise timing, the last corrupted mark was broken. The chamber answered with a deep pulse that echoed through every stone. Freed from the corrupted bindings, the space-attuned crystal rose quietly into the air. Jihan reached toward it with deliberate care instead of reckless speed. The crystal dissolved into radiant blue light before merging with the infinite space portal. The system flooded his vision with notifications announcing a long-awaited breakthrough. The victory came at a price as Crooked Moon Tower immediately began folding inward. June shouted that the natural stabilization cycle had to continue outside the ruin. Pouring the last of his strength into one enormous portal, Jihan opened an escape for everyone. The race against time had only just begun. Rowan made one final attempt to drag Jihan into the collapsing tower with him. Celine sliced away Jihan's torn coat while Kale drove Rowan backward with a powerful kick. The enemy commander tumbled into a warped passage, laughing even as space swallowed him. He vanished before anyone could learn whether the tower had claimed him. One after another, the survivors emerged onto the wet grass beside the waiting caravan. In the distance, Crooked Moon Tower flickered between ruin and reality before slowly settling into place. Vela's song guided the remaining distortion harmlessly into the earth. The wetlands fell silent, finally released from the crisis. Exhausted but alive, the team gathered around Jihan as the tension finally faded. Miral quietly treated his injuries while Celine disguised her relief behind familiar teasing. Lyra rushed from the camp and embraced him without a second thought, grateful he had returned safely. Then the system appeared once more. Dawn settled gently over the wetlands as the caravan finally enjoyed its first peaceful morning after the tower's collapse. Far behind them, Crooked Moon Tower stood broken yet stable, its crisis finally behind them. Jihan rested beside the campfire, hiding his exhaustion behind the same calm expression that had carried everyone this far. Then the system appeared again, reminding him that the greatest reward was only beginning. While the camp slowly came to life, Miral carefully replaced the bandage on Jihan's arm. Nearby, Lyra tried to hide the worry she still carried after the previous day's battle. Celine leaned casually against a wagon, pretending complete indifference despite watching everything. Sora looked between the three women and quietly decided that emotions were becoming more dangerous than monsters. The system confirmed what the entire journey had been leading toward. The space-attuned crystal and every mana stone they had gathered were drawn into the infinite space portal. Blue light flowed through the growing domain as the skill absorbed its newest source of power. One final notice appeared, warning that the second stage would transform far more than simple storage. Taking a steady breath, Jihan opened the infinite space portal once again. The familiar doorway expanded into something far larger and far more stable than before. A cool wave of mana swept across the campsite, leaving everyone staring in silence. It no longer resembled a storage spell. It felt like the entrance to another world. Jihan quietly admitted that Aurelis House had outgrown the dream of one person. He invited Miral, Rhea, Leora, and Sora to witness the expanded domain before anyone else. Lyra and Celine looked on in obvious surprise until Jihan extended the same invitation to them. This journey, he explained, had already made them part of the people he trusted most. Together they stepped through the portal into the transformed domain. The small workshop they remembered had unfolded into a vast chamber suspended in endless blue light. Dark glass platforms formed beneath their feet while luminous currents flowed overhead. The future of Aurelis House stretched out before them. A clear system announcement echoed across the enormous space. Automated workstations emerged one after another, shaped entirely from mana. Mixing stations, bottle molds, storage systems, and packaging counters assembled with flawless precision. Jihan could only smile as the dream of a true factory finally became reality. Miral wandered slowly between the floating workstations, barely believing what she was seeing. There would be no rent, no thieves, no storms, and no corrupt officials inside this place. Her mind instinctively calculated costs, efficiency, and expansion faster than she could speak. When she looked back at Jihan, admiration and responsibility filled her eyes. Leora examined each production station with the curiosity of a devoted alchemist. Instead of ordinary tools, the workshop shaped ingredients through perfectly controlled mana. Every process looked cleaner, safer, and more consistent than the finest laboratories she had ever visited. She quietly admitted that every alchemist guild would dream of studying such a place. Lyra's attention settled on the storage shelves and automated packaging lines. As a merchant, she immediately understood what constant production during travel could mean. With enough mana, Aurelis House would never again be tied to a single workshop or city. The possibilities expanded faster than even her experienced instincts could follow. Celine rested a hand against one of the shimmering walls and spoke more seriously than usual. If the Closed Eye ever discovered the full truth of this domain, they would hunt Jihan without end. Rhea agreed that protecting the secret meant protecting the people who knew it. Jihan silently accepted the burden that came with every new achievement. Without waiting for anyone else, Miral pledged to guard the secret with everything she had. Rhea promised to protect lives before property, while Leora, Sora, Lyra, and Celine each offered their trust in their own way. Their promises echoed softly through the vast domain. For the first time, Jihan truly felt the weight of leading people who believed in him. To test the new workshop, Jihan activated its first automated production cycle. Mana surged through the stations as everyday Lumisilk bottles began forming on their own. The speed surpassed anything the original workshop had ever achieved. A new system report proudly revealed the domain's remarkable daily output. The celebration lasted only a moment before another warning appeared. Large-scale production would demand stronger mana stones and ever-rarer materials. Future products would require better designs, greater resources, and more dangerous adventures. Rather than discouraging him, the challenge only sharpened Jihan's determination. When the group returned to the campsite, the ordinary world felt strangely small. Sora dropped onto a nearby crate and declared that impossible business magic deserved an immediate meal. Her complaint earned warm laughter from the entire group. For the first time in days, everyone relaxed. Soon afterward, the caravan resumed its journey through the wetlands. Maris guided them safely along hidden reed paths while Aaron scouted the surrounding marsh. NYM quietly marked unstable ground for the wagons behind them. Near the front, Jihan could still feel the expanded portal humming deep within him. The mist gradually opened to reveal Luthmir rising above the Silver River. Stone piers, wooden bridges, water wheels, and floating markets painted a city unlike anywhere Jihan had visited before. Blue lanterns reflected across the current, giving the river a dreamlike glow. Lyra smiled as she explained that this modest town controlled one of the kingdom's most valuable trade routes. At the raised river gate, guards carefully inspected every arriving caravan. Smuggling through the wetlands had made caution part of everyday life. A young knight named Elise Varrow stepped forward with the confidence of a seasoned officer. Her first question made it clear she believed this caravan was carrying far more than luxury goods. Knight Elise studied Jihan with the sharp focus of someone trained to notice what others ignored. His companions, their equipment, and the unusual discipline of the caravan told her this journey involved far more than ordinary trade. Rather than answering defensively, Jihan calmly introduced Aurelis House and its mission. Elise wasn't convinced yet, but she respected how little he tried to impress her. Before the inspection could grow tense, Lyra stepped forward with the Venn Trading House documents already prepared. She guided the gate officials through permits, taxes, and cargo records with effortless confidence. Watching her work, Jihan realized that diplomacy could be just as powerful as a sword. Miral quietly admired the performance while promising herself she would become just as formidable. Once the paperwork was complete, the caravan was escorted to the Riverside Administration Hall. Mayor Corvin Luth welcomed them with a broad smile that never quite reached his calculating eyes. He praised successful merchants while carefully measuring every opportunity standing before him. Jihan immediately understood he was speaking to a politician who valued results above promises. Corvin explained how Luthmir thrived on river trade, travelers, inns, and bustling markets. Luxury goods attracted nobles, while practical supplies kept the city's workers moving every day. Listening carefully, Jihan recognized the rare chance to serve both ends of the market at once. The town wasn't just another destination, it was the perfect place for Aurelis House to expand. Miral opened the company ledger with calm confidence and began presenting their product lines. She explained production records, safety testing, premium reservations, and protections for ordinary customers. The organized system impressed even the cautious mayor. Standing nearby, Elise found herself respecting the quiet accountant more with every answer. The negotiations continued at the Blue Heron House, the busiest inn along the river. Its owner, Masha, welcomed them with booming laughter and years of practical experience. She described the endless complaints of travelers dealing with harsh soaps and stubborn river grime. Jihan immediately recognized the opportunity hidden inside an everyday problem. Rather than relying on promises, Jihan demonstrated the daily-use Lumisilk bottle on the spot. The gentle cleanser removed heavy stains while leaving behind a clean, refreshing scent. Masha tested it herself before bursting into delighted laughter. She declared that every boat captain on the river would soon be asking for entire crates. As if summoned by fate, veteran river captain Bellin entered the inn with mud still clinging to his boots. Masha insisted he try the product before he even had time to sit down. Belen reluctantly agreed, only to admit moments later that his crew would gladly pay for something this practical. For Aurelis House, another valuable partnership quietly began to take shape. That evening, Jihan walked across one of Luthmir's wooden bridges, watching the sunset shimmer across the river. Lyra joined him, explaining the hidden customs and unwritten rules that governed life along the trade routes. The conversation drifted away from business as she quietly admitted how relieved she was to see him return safely. For a little while, neither of them felt the need to hurry back. When Jihan mentioned that her travel charm had protected Miral inside Crooked Moon Tower, Lyra fell silent. She smiled with mixed emotions, grateful that the charm had fulfilled its purpose despite the circumstances. Saving someone precious, she said softly, was never something to regret. Jihan thanked her again, knowing the gift had changed far more than one battle. From an upstairs balcony, Miral caught sight of the quiet conversation unfolding on the bridge below. She looked away, only to find herself glancing back again a heartbeat later. Celine appeared beside her with a knowing smile, claiming that rivers somehow made jealousy look almost poetic. Miral insisted she was simply analyzing emotional complications, though even she struggled to believe it. Curious at last, Miral asked whether Celine herself had feelings for Jihan. The question erased Celine's teasing grin for a brief, honest moment. She admitted she admired people who made life both more meaningful and more dangerous. Looking toward the bridge, she smiled again, though this time the smile carried unexpected warmth. The following morning, Jihan visited the Luthmir Adventurer Guild to learn more about the region. Guild clerk Amara Dusk welcomed him with calm professionalism after recognizing his recent achievements. Her report suggested the wetlands were growing more unstable with every passing week. Another mystery was already waiting beneath the river. Amara explained that monsters had begun emerging from a forgotten shrine hidden below the flooded marsh. Level 12 marsh wraiths and corrupted amphibian creatures now threatened an important trade route. The guild had posted generous rewards along with salvage rights for anyone who succeeded. Jihan quietly recognized another opportunity hidden inside another crisis. Knight Elise arrived during the briefing and confirmed that earlier investigation teams had returned with impossible stories. Some spoke of doors opening beneath the water itself before vanishing without explanation. She believed the shrine might share the same unstable space phenomenon as Crooked Moon Tower. Every new clue pulled Jihan closer to the truth behind the distortions. Gathering his companions once more, Jihan outlined the expedition waiting ahead. He explained that the shrine could provide the mana and materials needed to strengthen the newly expanded domain. Miral reminded everyone that no business was worth reckless sacrifice. Jihan answered that lasting progress often began where others feared to look. Before departing, the first Luthmir shipment was secured inside trusted guild storage. Masha prepared a controlled bathhouse trial while Belen promised to discuss river transport upon their return. Mayor Corvin offered the town's cooperation, though his careful eyes continued weighing every advantage. Aurelis House had earned interest, but not unquestioning trust. As dusk settled across the wetlands, the expedition boarded flat-bottom boats and followed the silent channels into the marsh. Blue mist drifted over ancient stone pillars rising from the water like forgotten guardians. Then the system detected powerful mana signatures hidden beneath the surface. Morning mist clung to the wetlands as the boats drifted toward the ancient shrine, each ripple carrying the promise of another mystery. Beneath the dark water, a forgotten stone gate slowly awakened on its own. Ancient blue runes shimmered through the depths like distant stars beneath a silent sea. Then the same whisper returned, echoing through Jihan's mind with quiet certainty, "Bring the spatial key." Sora leaned over the boat, only to recoil the moment the voice answered from below. She insisted that anything capable of holding conversations underwater deserved immediate suspicion. Celine laughed at the remark, though her hand never left the hilt of her dagger. Meanwhile, Muriel calmly recorded the words, "spatial key," treating every clue as another piece of the larger puzzle. Before anyone could investigate further, a figure emerged from the water beside the boat. Weapons were drawn instantly until Maris recognized the newcomer and ordered everyone to stand down. The woman introduced herself as Rilke Tidehand, a professional diver who knew the flooded shrine better than anyone alive. With a teasing smile, she remarked that outsiders had a remarkable talent for drowning in sacred waters. Climbing aboard, Rilke wrung the water from her braided hair as though this were an ordinary meeting. She quoted her price with complete confidence, adding an extra fee should ancient curses decide to appear. Lyra joked that every local merchant bargained like a river pirate. Rilke only grinned wider, insisting river pirates had learned from the people of Luthmere. Their conversation was interrupted by an elderly boatman rowing quietly through the mist. Oren Moss introduced himself, his weathered or decorated with dozens of protective river charms collected over a lifetime. He warned that the sunken shrine punished greed far more harshly than ignorance. Jihan assured him they had come to understand its secrets, not plunder them blindly. With preparations complete, Rilke distributed breathing reed charms and weighted guide ropes to the expedition. Leora carefully tested each charm before allowing anyone to rely on its magic. Rhea remained above to protect the cargo and command the support boats if trouble appeared. Jihan, Muriel, Lyra, Celine, Kale, Nym, Maris, and Rilke quietly prepared for the descent. As Muriel fastened the breathing charm around her neck, Jihan noticed the tension in her hands. She admitted it wasn't monsters she feared, but endless water with no solid ground beneath her. Jihan simply offered his hand and promised she wouldn't have to face the unknown alone. His quiet reassurance eased her nerves more than any charm ever could. Watching from across the boat, Lyra noticed the exchange without saying a word. She smiled gently, though her fingers tightened around the familiar travel charm hanging at her side. Celine quietly joined her, observing that caring about someone courageous often meant worrying far too much. The remark earned a small laugh, though neither woman could entirely hide her concern. One after another, the team disappeared beneath the surface of the wetlands. The breathing charms surrounded each traveler with a thin veil of magical air as they descended. Ruined pillars, broken statues, and shimmering schools of silver fish drifted silently through the submerged sanctuary. Far below, the enormous stone gate waited exactly where the whisper had promised. Jihan placed his palm against the ancient rune carved into the center of the gate. Deep within him, the infinite space portal answered the shrine's forgotten magic. A glowing blue circle spread across the stone, perfectly mirroring the shape of his portal. Without making a sound, the shrine accepted him, spatial key confirmed. The massive gate opened, drawing the expedition into a dry corridor hidden beneath the water. Although surrounded by the flooded wetlands, not a single drop crossed the invisible barrier. Ancient lamps awakened one after another, illuminating the forgotten passage ahead. Even Rilke admitted she had never witnessed the shrine welcome anyone so willingly. Muriel paused to study the intricate murals lining the corridor walls. They depicted people opening gateways between distant kingdoms, thriving cities, and even unfamiliar stars. At the center stood a figure holding a brilliant crystal shaped like a glowing blue eye. Across several carvings, crude closed-eye symbols had been violently scratched into the ancient history. A ghostly figure slowly appeared at the end of the corridor, bathed in pale blue light. Clad in ceremonial robes and carrying a crescent-shaped staff, he introduced himself as High Priest Lumen. Rather than treating the visitors as intruders, he turned immediately toward Jihan. His ancient eyes reflected recognition that had waited generations for this meeting. Lumen revealed that the sunken shrine had never been built for worship. It had once served as a sanctuary where spatial routes between kingdoms were carefully maintained. When war threatened to corrupt that knowledge, the entire shrine was deliberately hidden beneath the wetlands. Now, the closed eye sought to awaken the forbidden network for its own ambitions. The priest explained that the shrine's mana core could never be claimed through strength alone. Its chosen bearer had to demonstrate control, sound judgment, and meaningful bonds with others. Failure would leave the challenger imprisoned within the shrine forever. Success, however, would grant the power needed to strengthen Jihan's second-stage portal. Without warning, glowing runes spread beneath everyone's feet. Jihan, Miral, and Lyra were drawn toward a central path lined with floating mirrors. Celine, Kale, and Nym vanished into a chamber built for combat, while Maris and Rilke were carried into flooded tunnels. The shrine had begun testing each group according to its own ancient rules. Jihan's path ended inside a circular hall surrounded by countless floating mirrors. Instead of reflections, each mirror revealed a different possible future waiting beyond today's choices. One future showed him standing alone with limitless wealth but no companions. Another revealed Aurelis House flourishing because the people beside him had grown together. Miral soon found herself facing mirrors of her own. One future reduced her to nothing more than a silent tool supporting someone else's success. Another showed her leading Aurelis House as its trusted director, shaping its future with confidence. Seeing her hesitate, Jihan quietly reminded her that only she could decide which future would become reality. Lyra's mirrors offered futures she had never dared to imagine. One path returned her to the Ven trading house, where she watched Jihan's journey from a distance. Another placed her beside Aurelis House as new trade routes united distant cities. A final vision blurred hope with uncertainty, reminding her that the future could never be claimed without difficult choices. Silence settled between Lyra and Miral as the mirrors slowly faded. Rather than forcing an answer, Jihan admitted that feelings could never be negotiated like business contracts. He cared deeply for both of them, but refused to let danger decide matters of the heart. Lyra laughed softly, deciding that was exactly the kind of answer only Jihan would give. The mirrors changed one final time, no longer revealing possible futures but the people standing there together. Lumen's calm voice echoed through the chamber, declaring that true connection could never be built through possession. A radiant blue rune appeared on Jihan's palm, acknowledging the first trial's success. The shrine had accepted not his strength, but the choices that guided it. Elsewhere, Celine, Kale, and Nym entered a chamber where 3 warriors of living water silently awaited them. Every movement they made was copied with flawless precision. Kale quickly realized brute force would only strengthen the reflections. Celine answered with a grin, deciding the best strategy was to become wonderfully unpredictable. Instead of perfect technique, the trio relied on creativity. Celine broke her rhythm with playful feints, Kale abandoned textbook forms, and Nym trusted clever traps over direct attacks. The mirrored warriors struggled to imitate teamwork born from trust rather than repetition. One after another, the watery guardians dissolved back into the shrine. Far below, Maris and Rilke faced a maze of spinning currents and flooded tunnels. Rilke swam with effortless confidence while Maris read the movement of bubbles and drifting silt like an open map. Together they uncovered hidden pockets of air between collapsed stones. Their quiet cooperation carried them safely through the shrine's final underwater trial. Above the shrine, the support boats continued waiting beneath the thick wetland mist. Rhea, Leora, Sora, Aaron, and Oren guarded both the cargo and the expedition's only route home. Then a silent arrow struck the lead boat without warning. Closed-eye raiders emerged from the reeds, hoping to seize the surface before the explorers returned. Rhea answered instantly, raising her shield before a second volley could land. She ordered Sora to ignite the emergency signal while Leora rushed to protect the precious Lumisilk supplies. Aaron's arrows found their marks with calm precision despite the growing chaos. Even above the shrine, the battle for its secrets had already begun. Sora raced from boat to boat with the emergency smoke tube clutched tightly in her hands. A raider lunged toward her, only to be knocked back by Oren's weathered oar. She launched the signal high into the mist, where brilliant blue smoke spread across the wetlands. Far below, the silent shrine seemed to notice the warning. Deep inside the sanctuary, the reunited paths led to a crystal coffin resting before the shrine core. Within it slept a young woman marked by faint blue runes that still shimmered across her arms. Lumen introduced her as Seris Vale, the final shrine keeper preserved through suspended sleep. The closed eye had sought to awaken her by force, never understanding what they truly endangered. Behind Seris rested the glowing shrine core that Jihan had searched so long to find. Taking it immediately would have been easy if he ignored the sleeping guardian before him. Miral watched carefully, sensing that this choice mattered more than any battle. Jihan quietly refused to build a future purchased through another person's sacrifice. Placing his marked palm upon the coffin's rune, Jihan followed Lumen's ancient instructions without hesitation. Miral carefully guided each step while Lyra steadied the protective charm beside them. Soft blue light filled the chamber as the crystal seal finally opened. For the first time in decades, Seris Vale opened her eyes. As Seris recovered, she learned that the ancient war had long since become history. She warned that the shrine core could never be allowed to fall into the hands of those bearing the closed eye symbol. Long ago, she explained, that faction had believed every road, kingdom, and market should be ruled through spatial gates. Only then did Jihan begin to understand the true scale of the conflict. The shrine suddenly trembled as corrupted water burst into the chamber. 3 marsh wraiths rose from the flooded floor, their dark forms wrapped in broken shrine runes and ancient masks. Seris recognized them immediately as guardians twisted by the closed eye's corruption. The final trial had become a desperate fight for the shrine itself. The separated teams reunited just as the battle erupted. Kale held back a wraith's relentless assault while Celine shattered another's mask with flawless timing. Rilke dragged one guardian away from Seris using her diving hooks as NYM disrupted the battlefield with careful traps. Meanwhile, Jihan redirected waves of corrupted water through precise portals, protecting everyone at once. Seeing the shrine weaken, Seris urged Jihan to link his portal with the shrine core for a single controlled pulse. Miral warned that even a small mistake could overwhelm his mana completely. Lyra tightened her grip on the familiar travel charm, placing her trust in him once more. Jihan answered with quiet resolve as he opened the infinite space portal before the ancient core. The shrine core answered with a brilliant surge of spatial energy that flowed directly into Jihan's portal. The marsh wraiths froze as corruption was stripped away from their bodies. Their ancient masks shattered, leaving behind 3 dense mana stones as clear water returned to the sanctuary. For the first time in generations, the shrine breathed peacefully again. A newly opened passage guided the expedition safely back to the surface. They emerged just as Ria's defenders finished driving away the last of the raiders. Stepping into sunlight for the first time in decades, Seris looked upon the world with trembling eyes. Then the system delivered it. By the time the boats drifted back into Luthmir, no one on the docks realized the journey had returned with more than exhausted adventurers. Hidden among the supplies were 3 level 12 mana stones, silent proof that the sunken shrine expedition had crossed a line few quests ever survived. Wrapped in a weathered cloak, Seris watched the bustling town with uncertain eyes, awakening to a future that had left her entire world behind. As the river bells welcomed another ordinary evening, Jihan's system quietly revealed a different truth. Second stage progress had reached 43%, and destiny was already moving again. Mayor Corvin hurried to greet the returning party with his usual confidence, but the moment his eyes met Seris, every practiced word disappeared. The ancient shrine markings on her arm spoke louder than introductions, hinting at a history even the town's oldest records could barely remember. When Vela revealed that Seris was the last keeper of the forgotten spatial shrine, whispers spread across the docks faster than the river current itself. Instead of celebrating her rescue, Seris asked a single heartbreaking question: how much of her world was still alive? No one could answer. Jihan knew comforting lies would only delay the pain, so he chose the harder path and told Seris the truth. The shrine order had vanished, the ancient war had ended centuries ago, and the closed eye survived only as a criminal force hiding in the shadows. Seris accepted every word in silence, though the way her hands gripped the cloak revealed a grief too deep for tears. Watching quietly, Myrrel understood that surviving the past was one battle. Learning to live in a world that had forgotten you was another entirely. Their impossible adventure soon became official history as the Adventurer Guild transformed every unbelievable event into written record. Amara Dusk carefully verified the mana stones, the shrine incident, and Seris's testimony, knowing that history often hid inside ordinary paperwork. One by one, Kale, Celine, Maris, Rilke, and NYM added their accounts until doubt had nowhere left to stand. When the guild finally approved the mission, Jihan earned far more than rewards. He earned a reputation that even experienced adventurers could no longer ignore. Knight Elise Varrow studied the completed report expecting to find another reckless gamble driven by ambition. Instead, every page painted a different picture, one of careful decisions, impossible odds, and lives saved when they should have been lost. Rescuing Seris, protecting the expedition, and securing the shrine's blessing had never come at the cost of abandoning his companions. Jihan simply replied that profit meant nothing if no one survived to enjoy it. For the first time, Elise answered with a smile instead of suspicion. Back at the Blue Heron House, Jihan finally laid the 3 level 12 mana stones on the table. Even after everything they had survived, the sight of them made the room fall completely silent. The stones radiated an overwhelming energy, reminding everyone that the sunken shrine had rewarded them with something far more valuable than treasure. Leora warned that the lingering shrine resonance was unstable and deserved respect, not excitement. Before Jihan could decide what to do next, Seris quietly revealed that the ancient resonance could become a blessing, if it was purified correctly. With that possibility in mind, Jihan led Myrrel, Leora, Seris, and Rhea into the infinite space portal, hoping the hidden workshop would reveal its answer. The moment the mana stones entered the domain, the workshop awakened as though it had been waiting for this exact day. New crafting stations emerged from streams of mana light, each one hinting at technology far beyond their current business. Then the system delivered the breakthrough Jihan had been waiting for. Aurelis House was no longer limited to cosmetics, it could step into medical supplies. Leora explained why that single announcement mattered more than it first appeared. The greatest problem was never the healing potions themselves, but the fragile containers that wasted precious medicine before it reached those who needed it. Every broken bottle quietly raised prices across the kingdom, leaving ordinary families to carry the burden. Jihan immediately saw the opportunity. If they could solve the container problem, they would improve an entire supply network instead of selling just another product. While everyone considered the idea, Myrrel was already calculating what such a business could become. She compared production costs, transport risks, mana expenses, and demand from every major customer they could reach. The profits would not rival Lumisilk at first, but the market was vastly larger and far more dependable. Jihan smiled because her conclusion matched his own. Luxury earned prestige, but serving everyday demand was how lasting empires were built. As the new workshop settled into silence, Seris gently touched one of the freshly formed veil molds, lost in memories from another age. She explained that her order had once created tools like these to protect travelers, never to enrich the powerful. The closed eye had later twisted the same knowledge into instruments of control, proving that even the greatest inventions depended on those who used them. Jihan understood the lesson immediately. If Aurelis House wanted to change the future, it had to build better systems before someone else corrupted them again. Confident in the workshop's success, Jihan carried the first Aurelis Seal Vial prototype to the docks, where real workers, not merchants, would decide whether it deserved a future. River Captain Bellin skipped polite inspection and tested it the only way he trusted, by treating it like everyday cargo. When the vial survived the impact without a single crack, the result spoke louder than any promise Jihan could have made. Bellin grinned. If the prototype could survive river life, healers across the waterways would want one. Seeing its potential immediately, Bellin brought Jihan to the dock authority, where the biggest trading decisions were made. There he introduced Captain Gregor Hames, a dockmaster whose approval carried enough weight to shape the flow of commerce. Rather than accept claims, Gregor demanded proof with his own hands. After watching the sealed vial remain perfectly dry in a barrel of water, even the seasoned dockmaster began looking at Jihan differently. Gregor was not finished testing. He searched for flaws with the determination of someone who had seen too many products fail after bold promises. No matter how hard he shook it, the seal never weakened, and everyone present understood the significance before anyone spoke. Countless merchants had quietly accepted losses from broken medicine bottles for years. Jihan offered only a limited trial, but Gregor warned that success on the river attracted powerful enemies just as quickly as powerful customers. The warning proved true almost immediately when an elegant red-sailed vessel approached the docks. Its owner stepped ashore with effortless confidence, as though every conversation on the river already belonged to him. Gregor introduced the newcomer as Merchant Lord Pavo Strake, whose family dominated much of Luthmir's transport supply trade. The moment Pavo noticed the Aurelis prototype, the atmosphere shifted from business to rivalry. Pavo welcomed Jihan with flawless manners, but every word carried the weight of an unspoken warning. He suggested that newcomers should seek permission before entering markets controlled by established families. Bellin quietly muttered that Pavo behaved as though the entire river belonged to him. Jihan calmly replied that customers, not old bloodlines, decided who deserved success. Pavo's smile remained, but it no longer looked friendly. Pavo never raised his voice. Instead, he wrapped his warning in polite advice, making every threat sound almost reasonable. According to him, shipments could be delayed, paperwork could disappear, and busy docks could suddenly become impossible to navigate. While everyone else listened, Myril quietly recorded every word without showing the slightest reaction. When Pavo mocked her for writing everything down, she calmly replied that accurate records had a way of outliving convenient lies. Before either side could push the confrontation any further, the arrival of a royal blue carriage drew every eye along the river. Duchess Celestine Armand stepped onto the docks, and her reputation alone was enough to silence conversations that moments earlier had been filled with tension. Although she was only passing through Luthmir, the influence of her family reached far beyond the city itself. Curious about the uneasy atmosphere, the Duchess simply asked what had caused such excitement during her visit. Mayor Corvin hurried forward to welcome the Duchess, while Pavo quickly exchanged confidence for flawless courtesy. Jihan greeted her with equal respect, careful to appear neither intimidated nor eager to impress. Rather than focusing on the popular Lumisilk products, Celestine's attention settled on the unfamiliar seal vial prototype. With a single request for a demonstration, the private dispute instantly became a public test that no one could avoid. Jihan filled the Aurelis seal vial with healing liquid and invited everyone to judge its quality through action rather than promises. Gregor, Bellin, and Leora each tested a different part of its performance, leaving little room for doubt. Celestine observed every reaction in silence, measuring not only the invention but also the character of the people behind it. As whispers spread through the crowd, Pavo realized the conversation was no longer under his control. The Duchess recognized the value almost immediately because safe medical transport mattered far beyond Luthmir's river trade. She requested the first opportunity to negotiate once the product completed proper verification. Instead of rushing to secure noble support, Jihan insisted that independent healers test the vials before any exclusive agreement was discussed. That answer earned Celestine's respect, while Pavo watched another piece of his influence quietly slip away. Just as the demonstration seemed to be ending, a nervous young alchemist forced his way through the gathering crowd with something important on his mind. He introduced himself as Reuven Pell, a former apprentice who had once worked under Strake River Supplies. The instant Pavo recognized him, the warmth disappeared from his face, revealing a history neither of them wanted to explain publicly. Reuven declared that he could prove the seal vial's quality, if Pavo stopped using fear to silence those who spoke the truth. His accusation changed the mood of the docks in an instant. Reuven claimed that Strake had knowingly sold fragile potion bottles for years, forcing customers to keep buying replacements. When he tried to expose the flaw, his license had been blacklisted before anyone could hear his evidence. Pavo dismissed him as a bitter former apprentice, but Jihan had seen this pattern before. Another powerful business had been built on keeping people dependent. Rather than allow the argument to continue, Duchess Celestine called for an immediate public comparison. If both sides believed they were right, then the products themselves would settle the debate. Reuven presented a standard Strake bottle while Leora carefully prepared identical healing samples under everyone's watch. With Seris inspecting the mana seals, the growing crowd fell silent, waiting for the truth to reveal itself. The outcome arrived faster than anyone expected. After a simple impact test, the Strake bottle began leaking exactly as Reuven had described. The Aurelis seal vial endured the very same test without losing a single drop. Pavo denied any knowledge of the defect, but Gregor had heard enough. An official investigation into Strake's river supplies would begin immediately. Once the crowd dispersed, Pavo approached Jihan with a very different proposal. He offered to purchase every Aurelis seal vial in private, promising wealth while quietly suggesting they should remain luxury goods. Jihan immediately recognized the real objective: control the supply, protect inflated prices, and preserve the old system under a different name. He refused without hesitation. Pavo accepted the answer with a calm smile, but his final warning made it clear that the struggle on the river had only just begun. After the confrontation finally ended, Jihan stood alone by the river, letting the noise of the docks drift into the background. Lyra joined him and joked that he had an unusual talent for making influential merchants into lifelong enemies. Jihan answered that progress almost always collided with people who benefited from keeping things the way they were. Lyra smiled at the quiet determination in his voice, realizing that no amount of pressure would make him abandon the path he believed was right. Later that evening, Miral found Jihan reviewing trade plans beneath the warm glow of a lantern. Instead of discussing business, she asked the one question he had been avoiding: whether Lyra's growing feelings made him uncomfortable. For once, Jihan had no quick answer. This was a problem that couldn't be solved with strategy or careful calculations. He finally admitted that feelings themselves never frightened him, hurting someone because of them did. Miral quietly reminded him that honesty was the only path that protected everyone. After a long silence, Miral gathered the courage to reveal what had been growing inside her heart. She confessed that standing beside Jihan was the one place where she truly felt safe, and saying those words was harder than facing any danger. She couldn't tell whether it was gratitude, loyalty, love, or something still waiting to be understood. Jihan never interrupted. When she finished, he gently told her there was no need to rush a name for feelings that were still finding their shape. The quiet moment was interrupted when Celine appeared at the doorway, only to hesitate after sensing the atmosphere inside. For perhaps the first time, she chose silence instead of teasing, ready to leave without disturbing them. Miral invited her to stay, deciding that honesty was stronger than silent misunderstandings. As Celine joined them, the rivalry that had lingered between the two women slowly gave way to an open conversation. Celine admitted that battles had always been easier for her than speaking honestly about her own heart. Fighting beside Jihan had become so natural that the feeling itself was beginning to scare her more than any monster ever could. Miral gently reminded her that fear did not make those feelings any less real. Jihan refused to make promises he couldn't keep, but he also refused to pretend nothing had changed. The fragile silence that followed carried more honesty than words ever could. The following morning, Sora arrived with two energetic twins whose confidence far exceeded their age. Nia quickly proved she had a gift for collecting rumors, numbers, and the little details most adults ignored. Her brother Nilo balanced that talent with remarkable speed, always knowing where people and shipments seemed to appear. After hearing what they could offer, Jihan welcomed both of them for a trial week, sensing they would become valuable eyes across the docks. The twins justified that decision almost immediately. Nia overheard that several Aurelis crates had been moved away from their assigned storage area without permission. At nearly the same time, Nilo spotted strake workers lingering around the wrong warehouse, turning suspicion into a clear pattern. Their report reached Sora, then Miral, and finally Jihan. Without realizing it, the first battle of the river trade war had already begun. Jihan hurried to the warehouse and found the missing Aurelis crates exactly where they should never have been. Someone had positioned them beside dangerous alchemy waste, creating the perfect setup for a devastating accusation. If officials discovered the scene first, Aurelis House could lose its reputation before the truth had a chance to surface. Ria immediately understood the trap. Whoever planned it was counting on inspectors arriving at precisely the right moment. Rather than panic, Jihan calmly turned the trap against its creators. Using a small portal, he secured the genuine Aurelis shipment inside his hidden space before anyone could interfere. Miral replaced the originals with carefully marked decoy crates, while Lyra left a written demand for witnesses to preserve the evidence. When footsteps approached outside, Ria opened the warehouse door herself. The people waiting were about to discover a very different scene than they expected. The false inspectors froze the instant they saw Captain Gregor and Knight Elise already standing inside. Nia and Nilo confidently identified the strake worker responsible for moving the crates, giving the investigation a clear starting point. Miral presented detailed records that exposed the illegal relocation, leaving almost no room for excuses. Gregor ordered the imposters arrested on the spot. Pavo's carefully prepared scheme collapsed before it could damage Aurelis House. That evening, Pavo stood aboard his red-sailed vessel, staring silently toward the lights of Jihan's inn. A raven bearing the mark of the closed eye landed beside him, carrying an offer that transformed business rivalry into something far more dangerous. Lord Varric promised support in exchange for Jihan's spatial secret, revealing that the river conflict was only one piece of a much larger game. As Pavo prepared for the coming auction, morning arrived, but Luthmir no longer felt like the peaceful river town Jihan had first entered. Beneath the lifting fog, another kind of battle was already beginning. Merchants, nobles, healers, and adventurers crowded the docks, each chasing opportunity while hiding ambitions of their own. Amid the growing excitement, Aurelis House stood ready with carefully prepared goods and flawless paperwork, knowing appearances alone would not decide today. Miral quietly reminded Jihan that today's enemies wouldn't carry swords or claws. They would fight with contracts, reputation, and carefully crafted lies. Not everyone had come to win fairly. From across the harbor, Pavo Strake watched the preparations with the confidence of a man expecting someone else's downfall. His workers moved with practiced precision, as though the river market had belonged to the Strake family for generations. But the source of Pavo's confidence wasn't the auction itself. Hidden beneath his coat rested the closed eye's latest promise, reminding him he was no longer acting alone. As his eyes settled on Jihan's stall, a faint smile crossed his face. Before the sun set, he intended to erase Aurelis House from the river entirely. Before either side could make the first move, a single arrival shifted the attention of the entire dock. Elise Varrow stepped onto the auction platform with the calm authority of someone who had spent years keeping greedy merchants under control. Captain Gregor introduced her only out of courtesy. Everyone already knew that once Lisa took charge, influence alone meant nothing. Her silver bell echoed across the harbor, silencing hundreds of voices at once. From that moment forward, every bid, every promise, and every mistake would matter. Lisa began by explaining the auction rules, though experienced merchants understood the real message hidden between every word. Every agreement would be witnessed, recorded, and verified, leaving little room for secret bargains or convenient lies. Anyone caught selling counterfeit goods or manipulating contracts would answer to both the guild and the dock authority. For the first time that morning, Pavo's confidence wavered ever so slightly. Muriel noticed immediately. The law had quietly become his biggest obstacle. Before the serious bidding began, Jihan gathered the people who had transformed Aurelis House from a simple dream into a company capable of standing among veterans. Muriel prepared every ledger and contract, knowing that a single misplaced word could become an enemy's greatest weapon. Lyra welcomed merchants with effortless confidence while the rest of the team spread through the crowd, each carrying out their role without needing instructions. Watching everyone move together, Jihan realized something had quietly changed. They no longer looked like survivors building a business, they looked like a team ready to shape the future. For a brief moment, the auction almost felt peaceful. As the crowd gathered, Lyra quietly straightened Jihan's collar with a gentle smile before stepping back. Muriel noticed the small gesture immediately, though she buried every emotion beneath the stack of contracts in her hands. Then Celine arrived as casually as ever, joking as if the crowded auction were nothing more than another ordinary day. Even Sora couldn't help smiling. Monsters, thieves, and rivals were one challenge, but the growing feelings surrounding Jihan were becoming a battle no strategy could easily solve. The real contest began with the first major auction lot, revealing that Pavo's greatest weapon had never been money alone. He deliberately forced prices higher, exhausting smaller merchants long before the most valuable routes appeared. Belen quietly explained that this was how Pavo controlled the river year after year, not by winning fairly, but by making everyone else too weak to compete. Jihan never joined the bidding war. Instead, he calmly studied every decision Pavo made, searching for the habits hidden behind his confidence. The longer Jihan observed, the clearer Pavo's strategy became. Whenever healer routes appeared, Pavo bid aggressively because controlling medicine meant controlling desperate customers. Even worthless shipments became useful if they forced rivals to waste precious coin, while fear often replaced careful calculation. Jihan quietly shared his conclusion with Muriel. They would never defeat Pavo by playing his game, they would change the rules entirely. The opportunity they needed arrived from an unexpected direction. A healer named Mira Solon approached the Aurelis stall, caring far more about reliable medicine than expensive appearances. Rather than asking about prestige, she wanted to know whether the seal vials could survive the demanding reality of daily medical transport. Leora's eyes brightened with excitement. At last, someone was judging their work by the lives it could protect instead of the profits it could earn. Jihan answered without using polished salesmanship, choosing honesty over marketing. He explained that one version of the vial was built for dangerous river transport, while another offered dependable protection for everyday clinics. No matter which version buyers chose, both would meet the same safety standards because protecting medicine mattered more than luxury. Mira Solon immediately understood the philosophy behind the design. For healers, fair prices and dependable supplies would always matter more than beautiful packaging. Just as the conversation was about to become Aurelis House's first major deal, Pavo stepped in with perfect timing and an even more polished smile. Rather than attack the product itself, he questioned Jihan's age, experience, and right to compete, hoping doubt would spread faster than the truth. Muriel answered before Jihan needed to speak, calmly placing every certification and safety record where everyone could read them. Leora followed with detailed performance reports. Instead of finding a nervous startup, Pavo found a company that had prepared for every question long before the auction began. Before the argument could continue, fate delivered exactly the witness neither side could ignore. A licensed cargo mage named Thane arrived at the docks, carrying the authority to judge fragile shipments without favor. Sensing the opportunity, Lisa proposed a public comparison between Strake's bottles and the Aurelis seal vials under identical conditions. Pavo had nowhere to retreat. Refusing the test would look like fear, but accepting it meant risking everything his reputation had protected. As the two containers were placed side by side, the entire harbor seemed to hold its breath. Thane subjected both bottles to the same harsh trials, leaving no room for excuses or accusations of unfairness. The Strake bottle failed first, and a single leak was enough to change the mood of the crowd. The Aurelis seal vial remained perfectly sealed. Long before Lisa announced the result, the whispers across the docks had already declared the winner. Just when the excitement reached its peak, an elderly craftsman quietly stepped forward from among the spectators. His name was Orvio, and decades spent crafting bottles had earned him the respect of merchants throughout the river trade. Instead of offering praise, he asked permission to inspect the Aurelis design with the eyes of a true artisan. Jihan welcomed the request without hesitation, knowing that the trust of a master craftsman could be worth more than another profitable sale. Orvio examined every curve of the vial with remarkable patience, smiling a little more after each careful observation. He explained that its shape reduced rolling during transport while allowing shipments to be packed more efficiently than older designs. Even the narrow neck had been designed to save valuable sealing materials without sacrificing reliability, a detail only experienced craftsmen would immediately appreciate. Jihan smiled quietly to himself. A practical idea carried from Earth had found new purpose in a completely different world, and it was beginning to change lives once again. While the crowd remained focused on the auction, another battle was quietly unfolding beneath their feet. A nimble dock scout named Kit slipped through the narrow spaces below the platform, watching what others never noticed. Hidden in the shadows, Kit caught a Strake worker fastening a strange rune beneath the Aurelis cargo area. The rune pulsed with unstable heat. Realizing sabotage was already in motion, Kit turned and sprinted to deliver the warning before it was too late. The message reached the Aurelis team within moments, and everyone reacted without hesitation. Nilo raced to alert Rhea and the nearby guards, while Nia carried every detail straight to Miral. Instead of panicking, Miral calmly pieced the information together, already seeing the trap hidden behind the report. When she quietly explained everything to Jihan, the warmth left his expression. Pavo had finally crossed the line from unfair competition into outright sabotage. Jihan refused to answer the threat with panic. Calm decisions had carried him this far, and today would be no different. Rhea quietly cleared the nearby cargo while Celine and Kale disappeared into the crowd to close in on the suspect. At the same time, Lyra kept nearby merchants occupied with effortless conversation, making the operation invisible to everyone around them. To the rest of the harbor, the auction continued as usual. Only Aurelis House knew they had just prevented a disaster before anyone realized it existed. With the area secured, Leora carefully located the hidden rune before its unstable magic could activate. Thane confirmed it had been designed to ignite during the busiest part of the auction, turning a crowded celebration into chaos. Rather than destroy the evidence, Leora carefully neutralized the magic while preserving every detail for investigation. Thane sealed the rune inside a sphere of water, reminding everyone that undeniable evidence would accomplish far more than angry accusations. Realizing the plan had failed, the Strake worker tried to disappear into the crowd before anyone noticed him. He barely made a few steps before Celine casually blocked his path with a smile that was far more dangerous than it looked. The moment he turned to flee another way, Kale was already waiting behind him with quiet confidence. With nowhere left to run, the worker froze as Rhea arrived and calmly offered him a choice: answer to the dock authority or explain everything before the warrior guild. Lisa's silver bell rang once more, and the restless harbor fell silent as every eye turned toward the unfolding investigation. Captain Gregor accepted the captured fire rune while Thane explained how close the auction had come to disaster. One by one, suspicious glances drifted toward Pavo. Even those who had supported him moments earlier began questioning what they had believed. Pavo denied every accusation, blaming a nameless employee instead. But for the first time, confidence gave way to uncertainty in his voice. Muriel stepped forward carrying something far more dangerous than anger, evidence that had been organized with relentless precision. She connected the warehouse incident from the previous day to the very same strike worker now standing under suspicion. Then Nia, Nilo, and Kit each added another piece of the timeline until the truth could no longer be dismissed as coincidence. Pavo tried to argue, but facts were quietly accomplishing what shouting never could. With every witness, his position grew weaker. Watching everything from her carriage, Duchess Celestine finally chose to speak, and the docs obeyed without hesitation. She reminded everyone that sabotage endangered far more than merchants. It threatened healers, travelers, and every innocent life depending on the river. Her calm words carried more authority than any accusation shouted across the harbor. At her request, Strake River Supplies was suspended from all medical bidding until the investigation concluded, and Lisa immediately enforced the ruling. For the first time that day, the confidence Pavo had worn like armor finally began to crack. Several longtime allies quietly stepped away, unwilling to remain beside a merchant surrounded by mounting suspicion. At the same time, healer houses naturally gravitated toward Aurelis House, placing their trust where actions had spoken louder than promises. Jihan never celebrated aloud. As Pavo retreated toward his red-sailed vessel, silence itself became the strongest statement of victory. With order restored, Lisa resumed the auction as though the river itself had decided it was time to move forward. Mira Solon became the first healer to place an official order for Aurelis seal vials, proving that trust had finally overcome doubt. Duchess Celestine strengthened the agreement with noble support, opening the door for the vials to reach far beyond Luthmir. When Captain Gregor approved the shipping route, Jihan realized they had earned far more than a contract. Aurelis House had secured its first true foothold in the river trade. Even after securing their first major victory, Jihan refused to celebrate as though the journey were over. To him, today was only the beginning. Instead of boasting about the new contract, he spoke about something far more important: medicine should reach people safely, no matter how difficult the road ahead became. He promised complete batch tracking, honest replacement policies, and responsibility for every genuine defect that carried the Aurelis name. The older merchants exchanged surprised glances. Confidence was common in business, but standing behind every product with a guarantee was something they rarely witnessed. Not long after the contracts were signed, another visitor approached Jihan, but this meeting had nothing to do with trade. Sir Renwald Pike, commander of Duchess Celestine's convoy guards, brought troubling news from the capital road. Medical shipments had been disappearing near Glassroot Ravine, where even experienced escorts had begun traveling with growing caution. Rather than asking for an immediate answer, Renwald left Jihan with a question that lingered long after he walked away. Would Aurelis House one day protect the very routes it hoped to supply? As Renwald described the dangers ahead, the picture became more unsettling with every detail. Crystal-backed creatures, glowing fog, and vanished caravans had turned Glassroot Ravine into a place merchants crossed only with reluctance. Most people heard a warning, but Jihan heard something else entirely, a challenge hiding behind the danger. Deep down, he sensed the mysterious portal system was quietly leading him toward that very destination. By evening, the noisy harbor finally settled into a rare moment of peace, giving everyone a chance to breathe. Standing beside the river, Lyra admitted she admired how Jihan had won the day without raising his voice once. Jihan smiled and answered that people usually shouted only after they had already lost control of the situation. His calm reply eased the fear Lyra had hidden since the fire rune was discovered, reminding her that true strength rarely needed to be loud. The quiet river made it easier to speak honestly than the crowded auction ever could. Lyra confessed that somewhere along the journey, her reasons for staying with Aurelis House had become deeply personal. Jihan never rushed her for an explanation, believing that sincere feelings should never be forced into hurried words. Before leaving, Lyra promised she would tell him everything when the time was right. Jihan simply nodded, knowing that some answers became more meaningful when they were worth waiting for. Long after the celebrations had faded, the docks finally grew quiet beneath the night sky, but Jihan's work was far from over. He found Celine keeping watch from the rooftop, where the river looked peaceful enough to hide every danger waiting beyond the horizon. She quietly observed that more and more people were beginning to wait for his safe return after every journey. Jihan admitted that responsibility had made him stronger, but it had also given him something new to lose. Celine smiled, reminding him that fear wasn't always a weakness, it could also be a reason to protect. For once, Celine let the silence linger instead of filling it with another joke. She confessed that she had once believed attachments only made warriors weaker, forcing them to hesitate when it mattered most. But traveling beside Jihan had slowly changed that belief, making loneliness seem far less appealing than she once imagined. Jihan understood the meaning behind her words without asking for more. Sensing the conversation had become too serious, Celine laughed and bumped his shoulder, breaking the tension before it could grow heavier. Later that night, Jihan returned to the temporary office, where another light was still burning. Miral had already finished reviewing the newly signed medical contract, correcting details no one else would have noticed. As Jihan thanked her, their hands brushed together for only a brief moment, yet neither hurried to pull away. Gathering quiet courage, Miral admitted she was finally learning to be brave about things no ledger or contract could ever measure. Curious, Jihan gently asked what kind of courage she meant. Miral confessed that one day she wanted to speak honestly about her feelings without fearing she could simply be replaced. Jihan answered without hesitation. To him, people were never possessions, and those who earned a place beside him could never be exchanged like merchandise. Miral smiled softly. No grand confession was needed, because his words had already become a promise she would never forget. While Aurelis House quietly celebrated its hard-earned success, Pavo returned to his red-sailed ship carrying nothing but frustration. Waiting for him was the shadow of Lord Varric Noct, appearing through a black crystal with cold, unwavering silence. Pavo admitted his failure at the auction but insisted the next journey would offer a far better opportunity to strike. Varric accepted no excuses. His order was simple: ambush the Glassroot Ravine convoy and bring Jihan back alive, with Captain Rowan Thale joining the hunt. The following morning marked a new milestone as Aurelis House officially secured its first river medical contract. Just as everyone began looking toward the future, Jihan's system quietly revealed another step in his growing journey. A new requirement appeared before his eyes: Glassroot mana resin. Without it, the next stage of the portal could never be unlocked. Jihan lifted his gaze toward the distant capital road. A new morning slowly unfolded over Luthmir, and with it came another chapter in Jihan's journey. The calm river behind him was giving way to roads filled with unknown dangers. For the first time, Aurelis seal vials traveled alongside healer supplies and noble cargo, turning a simple convoy into a test of everything the company had built. Before anyone departed, Sir Renwald carefully studied the route toward Glassroot Ravine, knowing every mile demanded caution rather than confidence. As Jihan climbed aboard, the system quietly reminded him of the true reason this journey mattered. Somewhere ahead awaited the Glassroot mana resin his growing power required. The convoy finally rolled forward, bringing together merchants, knights, healers, and Aurelis workers with a single shared destination. Rhea organized every guard position before the first wagon gained momentum, leaving as little as possible to chance. Kale, Celine, and NYM spread across the caravan, each protecting a different angle as though they had traveled together for years. Meanwhile, Miral tracked every crate while Lyra finalized the remaining travel agreements. Long before danger appeared, everyone already understood their role. Among the travelers, one passenger quietly drew Jihan's attention. Watching from her polished carriage, Duchess Celestine calmly observed the expedition while her experienced escort prepared for the road ahead. Only one night betrayed her nerves. A young cadet named Rosalind proudly introduced herself, determined not to let fear overshadow her first dangerous assignment. The way she gripped her spear told Jihan everything he needed to know. Courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was the decision to keep moving despite it. Just before the convoy departed, another important wagon arrived carrying something even more valuable than treasure. The young apothecary Lumavire stepped down with practiced care, treating every crate of medicine as though lives already depended on it. The ink staining her hands spoke of countless hours spent helping patients instead of chasing glory. She admitted she had joined the expedition for one simple reason. Not everyone preparing for the journey carried a weapon. Some carried something just as important. Dabo cheerfully filled the supply wagon with enough food to keep the entire convoy moving, insisting that hungry people never made good defenders. Sora immediately declared him the most valuable member of the expedition, earning laughter from everyone nearby. Dabo promised extra stew if she kept delivering messages with the same energy. For a brief moment, the road ahead felt a little less intimidating. With every final check complete, the convoy finally left Luthmir behind, and the familiar river slowly disappeared into the distance. The road climbed steadily through the hills, carrying merchants, healers, and soldiers toward territory where every turn demanded caution. Before the city vanished completely, Jihan glanced back and noticed Pavo's red-sailed ship still resting silently at the docks. That silence lingered in his mind. An enemy who stopped making threats was often preparing something far more dangerous. As the convoy climbed higher, the landscape itself began to change in ways few newcomers had ever witnessed. Crystal-like roots shimmered beneath the ground, spreading through the hills like glowing veins beneath the earth. Luma explained that those strange roots produced the rare glassroot mana resin whenever powerful monsters disturbed them. Jihan immediately understood why adventurers, merchants, and criminals all kept risking their lives to return to this place. Not long afterward, a lone figure emerged from the trees with the confidence of someone who knew the ravine better than any map. Introducing himself as Fen Alder, the local ranger greeted the convoy and took his place beside Sir Renwald. His weathered bow, carved from glassroot wood, hinted at countless years surviving where others rarely returned. Before anyone could relax, Fen delivered troubling news. Something deep inside the valley had changed, and the forest no longer behaved as it once had. Fen explained that ordinary crystalback lizards were dangerous, but predictable enough for experienced escorts to handle. Recently, however, far stronger creatures had begun appearing near the road without any natural explanation. Dark veins spreading across their crystal scales suggested corruption rather than ordinary growth. The moment Celine heard that description, her thoughts returned to a familiar enemy. Once again, the closed eye seemed to be leaving its shadow behind. As the caravan continued deeper into the hills, Miral quietly reviewed emergency plans beside Jihan one final time. Even while discussing routes and supplies, she couldn't hide her concern after noticing the exhaustion he tried so carefully to ignore. Jihan teased her by asking whether she was worrying as Aurelis House's manager or simply as Miral. Her gentle reply made him smile. Somewhere along the journey, those two responsibilities had quietly become one and the same. While the caravan pressed onward, Lyra quietly began learning about the people traveling beside them. Simple conversations soon revealed who carried medicine, fragile cargo, noble gifts, and the supplies the entire expedition depended upon. By the time she returned, she understood the convoy better than most of the guards protecting it. Jihan admired the skill. Where others saw casual conversation, Lyra uncovered strategy. As the road narrowed, Celine abandoned her scouting position and chose to walk beside Jihan. She warned that a convoy this valuable would inevitably attract unwanted attention. If the closed eye struck, it would target either Jihan, the seal vials, or whoever looked easiest to break. Jihan calmly asked who she believed that weakest link might be, leaving the question hanging between them. By afternoon, glass-root ravine finally appeared on the horizon. Towering cliffs glowed with crystal roots that shimmered through the stone like frozen lightning. A narrow bridge stretched across the mist-filled chasm, offering no room for mistakes. Far below, crystalback lizards prowled among glowing crystals, proving why so many feared this crossing. A lone beast tamer waited beside the bridge with a great hawk resting calmly on his arm. Fen introduced him as Heliot, the man who understood the ravine's wildlife better than anyone alive. Even the hawk seemed uneasy as it watched the glowing roots in silence. Heliot admitted the animals were no longer hunting for food. They were fleeing something hidden deeper within the ravine. Before allowing the wagons onto the bridge, NYM insisted on a careful inspection. Fresh marks beneath the railing looked far too deliberate to belong to monsters. Kale soon uncovered a support cable that had been partially cut by human hands. Rhea halted the convoy immediately. Someone had planned this crossing to end in disaster. Sir Renwald struggled to understand how such careful sabotage had escaped notice. Myrrel explained that the damage had been timed to fail only after the heaviest wagons reached the center. Lyra quietly added that the medicine wagon had been scheduled to cross third. Jihan realized the enemy had known their convoy order long before the journey began. Instead of panicking, everyone moved with disciplined efficiency. Fen and Heliot reinforced the bridge while fresh ropes were secured to sturdy glassroot trees. Rhea, Roslyn, and Leora guarded the crossing as workers protected the precious medicines. Even Dabo helped by serving hot tea, reminding exhausted hands to stay steady. Their preparations were interrupted when movement echoed from the ravine walls. Corrupted crystalback lizards climbed toward the road, their scales scarred by unnatural dark veins. Fen swore normal creatures never behaved this way. One glance at the monster bait clinging to their scales told Jihan everything. Someone had driven them here. Orders spread through the convoy before fear had a chance to take hold. Rhea formed a shield wall while Kale and Celine intercepted attacks from both flanks. Jihan moved every non-combatant behind the wagons without slowing the caravan. Sora, Nia, and Nilo raced between every position, keeping the defense united. The first impact shook the entire defensive line. Crystal shards rained toward the medicine wagons as another monster attacked from range. Jihan redirected most of the deadly barrage through quick portals before it reached the convoy. One shard still struck Roslyn's shoulder, proving that even the best plans carried risk. Luma reacted before panic could spread. Opening an Aurelis seal vial, she found the medicine perfectly preserved despite the rough journey. Roslyn's wound was treated almost immediately, allowing the young knight to return to the line. In that moment, the convoy witnessed exactly why the new vials mattered. During the battle, Jihan noticed glowing resin spilling from shattered glassroot. The system instantly identified it as the material needed for his next portal upgrade. Claiming it meant stepping deeper into danger while the fight still raged. Myrrel recognized the look in his eyes before he spoke. She already knew his decision. Jihan explained the importance of the glowing resin without wasting a single breath. Myrrel immediately reorganized the convoy into collection and protection teams. Rhea promised to hold the monsters back while tools and containers were prepared. Within moments, frightened travelers became a coordinated operation. With Celine beside him, Jihan advanced toward the glowing resin. Corrupted lizards tried to cut them off before they reached their objective. Celine created an opening while Jihan redirected another crystal blast through a portal. Working in perfect rhythm, they carved a path straight through the chaos. One crystalback slipped past the defenders and charged directly at the merchant wagons. Instead of reaching for a weapon, Lyra grabbed an emergency flare. The brilliant flash staggered the monster long enough to ruin its attack. Kale arrived a heartbeat later and finished the threat before the cargo was lost. While gathering the precious resin, Myrrel stepped onto loose stone hidden beneath the dust. The ground collapsed without warning, sending her toward the ravine. Before anyone else could react, Jihan opened a portal and caught her hand across the gap. With one desperate pull, he brought her safely back. Breathing hard, Miral steadied herself against Jihan after the rescue. For a brief instant, the sounds of battle seemed to disappear around them. She quietly admitted she hated seeing him risk himself to save her again and again. Jihan answered with nothing more than a relieved smile. The moment of calm vanished as the mist across the ravine darkened. A massive glass-root stalker climbed into view, dwarfing every creature they had fought so far. The system identified it as a level 15 threat. Even the corrupted lizards retreated, treating the newcomer as the true ruler of the ravine. A black flare suddenly rose from the opposite cliff. Fen spotted hooded figures watching the entire battle from a hidden trail. Among them stood a man wearing Captain Rowan Thale's unmistakable military coat. Jihan realized this ambush had been planned to study him as much as destroy the convoy. Jihan refused to reveal the full extent of his portal powers while unseen enemies watched. Instead, he relied on precise portals hidden naturally within his swordsmanship. Celine and Kale adjusted their attacks to conceal every impossible movement. Behind them, Rhea held the defensive line together without allowing panic to spread. The glass-root stalker answered with a devastating crystal beam. Jihan opened a medium portal for only an instant, redirecting the attack into the cliffs. Shattered stone crashed across the ravine instead of the convoy. The effort drained enormous mana, leaving him barely standing. Miral noticed a crack spreading across the monster's chest crystal. Lyra's flare blinded the beast at exactly the right moment. Celine and Kale forced it to expose its weak point. Without hesitation, Jihan drove his sword into the fractured crystal. The glass-root stalker dissolved into glittering crystal dust as silence slowly returned. Leora carefully collected the precious glass-root mana resin left behind. The system confirmed the material required for the portal had finally been secured. Second stage progress climbed to 78%. When the fighting ended, Jihan searched the opposite cliff once more. Rowan and the hooded observers had already vanished into the mist. Fen recovered a familiar black token from a broken marker nearby. Celine quietly concluded the enemy had only wanted to measure Jihan's strength. After emergency repairs, the convoy crossed the bridge one wagon at a time. Rhea, Renwald, and Roslyn personally guided every crossing. Despite the ambush, both the medicines and the Aurelis seal vials reached the far side intact. Watching from her carriage, Duchess Celestine regarded Jihan with renewed interest. By nightfall, the convoy finally made camp beyond the ravine. As Luma treated the wounded, old rivalries softened into quiet respect around the campfire. Holding the glowing mana resin, Jihan received another message. Morning arrived beyond Glassroot Ravine, but for Jihan the previous battle felt less like an ending and more like the beginning of something greater. While the convoy repaired its wagons and tended the wounded, one victory stood above the rest: every shipment of precious medicine had survived the journey intact. Sitting quietly beside the campfire, Jihan studied the sealed glassroot mana resin they had fought so hard to obtain. Then the system revealed the next step. Before healing potion production could begin, he would have to find a living herb core. Luma listened carefully as Jihan explained the strange material the system demanded next. Her expression changed immediately. A living herb core was no ordinary herb, it was a legend among apothecaries. Such treasures formed only where healing mana and monster blood had intertwined for countless generations. Many master healers spent their entire lives searching for one without ever succeeding. The answer came from someone who remembered an older world. Seris searched memories preserved from before her long sleep and recalled an ancient place called Mossvale Sanctuary. Once protected by druids and shrine healers, its sacred groves had saved countless lives. If a living herb core still existed anywhere nearby, Seris believed Moss Vale was their best chance. Time, however, refused to wait. Sir Renwald insisted the main convoy continue toward safety while Duchess Celestine agreed the medical supplies could not risk another delay. Jihan chose to leave the caravan with only a small expedition. Before anyone moved, Miral had already begun organizing every detail of the temporary command plan. Not everyone would enter the forest. Rhea remained with the convoy while Luma stayed behind to continue documenting the seal vial's performance. Jihan assembled a smaller team for the sanctuary, bringing together trusted companions for the search ahead. Sora grinned and declared that every serious expedition needed someone whose job was keeping everyone motivated. Just before they departed, Lyra quietly tied a travel charm to Jihan's belt for luck. Without saying a word, Miral adjusted it so it wouldn't interfere with his sword. Celine laughed that they were preparing him for a festival instead of an expedition. The teasing spread through the group, easing the tension before they stepped into the unknown. Following Fen, the team left the road behind and entered a valley unlike anywhere they had traveled before. Ancient trees wrapped in glowing moss surrounded them as the forest settled into an almost sacred silence. Tiny golden insects drifted through the air like floating lanterns. Leora whispered that the mana here felt gentle, yet astonishingly powerful. Their peaceful walk ended when a broad-shouldered hunter stepped from behind the trees with his bow already drawn. Fen greeted him as Bram Kale, guardian of Moss Vale's outer paths. After carefully studying the newcomers, Bram lowered his weapon, but not his caution. His first question was simple: why had merchants come to sacred ground? Even after hearing their explanation, Bram remained uneasy. He revealed that black-robed strangers had entered the sanctuary only nights earlier. Since then, guardians had become violent and healing plants had begun producing poison. Celine quietly voiced the thought everyone shared. The closed eye had arrived first. Bram warned that Moss Vale rewarded respect but punished greed. The forest willingly shared its gifts only with those who harvested responsibly. Anyone taking more than they needed would eventually earn the grove's hatred. Jihan answered that lasting prosperity had always been worth more than reckless profit. Without warning, a tiny glowing fairy landed squarely on Sora's head. Sora froze as the mischievous spirit poked her forehead in amusement. The fairy introduced herself as Lily, guide of the sanctuary and owner of an impressively sharp tongue. Smiling mischievously, she announced the forest had been waiting for its noisy space boy. Lily agreed to guide them, but only if they paid properly. Lyra offered coins, earning nothing but a bored look from the tiny fairy. Instead, Miral promised in writing that Aurelis House would never exploit the sanctuary. Lily approved the promise, though she admitted honey cake sounded far more exciting. After happily devouring a cake larger than herself, Lily finally accepted the role of guide. With a playful snap of her fingers, tangled roots slowly parted. A hidden trail lit by glowing blue flowers appeared where solid ground had stood moments before. Jihan realized the sanctuary had been hiding its true path all along. The secret trail opened into a meadow overflowing with rare medicinal flowers. Some glowed with healthy life while others had blackened under corruption. Leora examined the strange pollen and recoiled in alarm. The healing mana hadn't vanished, it had been twisted into poison. The sight struck Leora harder than any battle. She understood how much priceless knowledge had been lost by poisoning a place like this. Whoever had done this wasn't stealing herbs, they were trying to erase the sanctuary itself. Jihan quietly promised they would save everything that still could be saved. The forest fell silent before a majestic stag emerged from the ancient trees. Its once beautiful antlers pulsed with corrupted mana instead of gentle light. The system identified it as the level 12 Mossvale Stag Guardian. Bram whispered that this guardian had once protected lost children, never hunted them. Kale instinctively reached for his sword, but Seris stopped him at once. Destroying the guardian would only deepen the forest's suffering. Jihan ordered everyone to subdue the creature without taking its life. Even Celine admitted mercy could be far more difficult than victory. The battle became a test of precision rather than brute force. NYM's trap slowed the Guardian while Bram targeted only the corrupted vines. Celine carefully cut away spreading corruption instead of harming the stag itself. Meanwhile, Jihan redirected every charge with small portals, protecting both his companions and the forest. Working together, the team turned preparation into hope. Leora carefully mixed a cleansing solution inside an Aurelis seal vial, trusting the reinforced container to hold the unstable ingredients. Seris strengthened the mixture with ancient shrine magic, giving it the power the sanctuary had long forgotten. With a precise portal, Jihan spread the cleansing mist across the Guardian's corrupted antlers. The change came slowly, then all at once. The mighty stag lowered itself as the corruption finally began to fade from its body. Gentle emerald light returned to its antlers, replacing the dark poison that had consumed it. The restored Guardian bowed silently, thanking those who had chosen compassion over destruction. Only after the danger passed did the tension finally catch up with Miral. Jihan noticed her trembling hand and quietly covered it with his own. For once, she didn't hide behind work or pull away. Watching from nearby, Lyra smiled warmly, happy to see relief instead of rivalry. The forest had one more trial waiting. A woman clad in living bark armor stepped through the trees and introduced herself as Kasha, the last herbal knight of Mossvale. Although the restored Guardian welcomed Jihan, Kasha kept her spear ready. Good intentions, she warned, still had to earn trust. Kasha spoke bluntly, accusing outsiders of seeing forests as nothing more than future profit. Jihan didn't hide why he had come. He admitted he sought the living herb core, but only to create healing potions ordinary people could afford. His honesty earned silence instead of immediate acceptance. Without another word, Kasha led the group to the heart of Mossvale. An ancient tree pulsed weakly beneath spreading corruption. She explained that the poison was slowly reaching the sanctuary's living heart. If Jihan wished to receive the living herb core, he would first have to save the grove itself. Hidden high above the clearing, unseen eyes followed every step the team took. The watcher was Norex, a closed-eye poisoner who specialized in corrupting places meant to heal. Confident in his work, he smiled as Jihan approached the dying heart tree. The trap had been built to punish anyone who tried to save the forest. Without warning, hidden pods burst open around the grove. Dark pollen flooded the air as Lily shouted for everyone to cover their faces. Leora quickly realized the poison became stronger whenever healing magic touched it. Seris understood ordinary purification would only make the disaster worse. Rather than rushing forward, Jihan studied the corruption like a puzzle waiting to be solved. If healing mana strengthened the poison, then the poison had to be isolated first. Small portals separated the tainted mana flowing through the roots while Miral mapped every channel. At the same time, Leora prepared a stabilizing mixture without using healing mana at all. While the ritual began, the rest of the team protected every precious second. Kale and Celine held back corrupted thorn beasts before they reached the grove. Lyra, Sora, Bram, and Kasha worked in perfect coordination as Seris guided purified shrine mana through the isolated roots. Little by little, hope returned to Mossvale. The calm shattered when Norex finally revealed himself. Poison needles flew toward Leora, but Jihan redirected them through a portal before they struck. Celine charged immediately, only for Norex to dissolve into black pollen. Kasha recognized the stolen grove techniques at once, confirming the enemy knew Mossvale's secrets. Laughing from the shadows, Norex unleashed his true weapon. Poisoned vines, monster remains, and corrupted flowers fused into a level 14 poison thorn chimera. Black sap hissed across the ground wherever it fell. Even Lily abandoned her confidence and hid inside Sora's hood. The chimera attacked the heart tree first, unleashing a storm of razor-sharp thorns. Jihan bent the first deadly barrage away with portal shields. Kale shattered the next wave while Lyra's flare created the opening they desperately needed. The battle reached its turning point. Watching every movement, Myrrel discovered the corruption source hidden along the creature's root spine. She risked moving closer to mark the weak point. A poison thorn lashed toward her before she could escape. Celine intercepted it in a single strike and pulled her safely back. Myrrel called out the weak point as everyone acted together. Kasha bound the chimera with living roots bursting from the earth. Using a portal step, Jihan appeared above the trapped monster in an instant. One decisive strike shattered the corruption core and broke the creature's control over the grove. The enormous chimera collapsed as its strength finally disappeared. Leora's stabilizer prevented the remaining poison from spreading any farther. Seris and Lily filled the clearing with shrine mana and glowing fairy light. Healthy life slowly reclaimed the forest. In response, the ancient heart tree opened a hollow within its trunk. Resting inside was a radiant living herb core, glowing like a living seed. Kasha freely offered the treasure, explaining that the forest rewarded those who gave more than they took. Jihan accepted it with gratitude and a respectful bow. As the expedition prepared to leave, the infinite space portal shone with brilliant green light. The system confirmed every requirement for basic healing potion production had finally been fulfilled. Second stage progress climbed to 91%, bringing Jihan closer than ever to his next breakthrough. Morning sunlight spilled across Mossvale, revealing a forest that was finally beginning to heal after everything it had endured. The once corrupted flowers bloomed again with gentle green mana, silently proving their struggle had not been in vain. Jihan held the living herb core and felt its quiet pulse resonate with his own mana. Then the system delivered the moment they had all been working toward. Basic healing potion production was finally unlocked. Without wasting time, Jihan returned to the Aurelis Space Workshop alongside Myrrel, Leora, Seris, and Kasha. The workshop welcomed the new ingredient as though it had been waiting for this day from the beginning. The living herb core floated above the central platform while glassroot resin and mana stones gathered around it. What emerged felt less like a machine and more like the birth of a living craft. Blue light intertwined with living roots as a brand new workstation assembled itself before everyone's eyes. Purification channels, rune measures, herb chambers, and sealed molds formed with flawless precision. When the system revealed the name Basic Healing Potion Station, Leora could only watch in amazement. Even Seris admitted that the ancient shrine builders had never imagined anything quite like this. The recipe surprised everyone with its simplicity rather than impossible miracles. Clean water, common herbs, mana stones, and only a tiny pulse from the living herb core formed its foundation. The potion was designed to heal everyday wounds and stabilize poison, not replace skilled healers. Jihan smiled. Saving thousands of ordinary lives mattered far more than creating a single legendary cure. The station hummed softly as glowing channels carried each ingredient into place. An Aurelis seal vial formed naturally around the mixture before sealing itself. A single emerald healing potion settled onto the tray in complete silence. For several seconds, nobody spoke. They all understood history had quietly changed. Leora eagerly began examining the first completed potion. Every test confirmed the same result: stable, pure, and remarkably consistent. Compared with ordinary market medicine, the difference was impossible to ignore. For the first time, dependable healing could truly be produced on a meaningful scale. Kasha watched the new station with cautious approval. She reminded Jihan that Mossvale had placed its trust in him because he had chosen balance over greed. If Aurelis House ever forgot that promise, the forest itself would remember. Jihan accepted the warning without hesitation. The system then revealed the workshop's current limits. 200 basic healing potions could be safely produced each day. Greater production would require stronger mana stones and additional living herb support. Myril was already calculating contracts, reserves, emergency stock, and future expansion. Before anyone else spoke, Myril organized every future batch into 3 clear purposes. One share would honor healer contracts already waiting. Another would remain untouched for emergencies. The final portion would ensure ordinary families could still afford treatment through trusted clinics. Jihan approved Myril's entire plan without changing a single detail. The unexpected praise left her momentarily speechless. Leora hid a smile behind another inspection of the workstation. Myril quietly replied that she had simply turned Jihan's ideals into something the world could truly use. With Mossvale restored, it was finally time to return. Kasha granted safe passage while Lily happily rode on Sora's shoulder. The first healing potions rested securely inside Jihan's portal domain. Behind them, the forest slowly closed its hidden paths as if offering a silent farewell. Back in Luthmir, Jihan delivered the first test batch to the city's main healer house. Patience filled every room, reminding everyone why this work mattered. Matron Isel welcomed them with the caution of someone who trusted results more than promises. Fancy bottles meant nothing to her until the medicine proved itself. Isel began careful trials using minor injuries and diluted poison samples. Leora recorded every reaction while Mira Solon observed as an independent witness. Each patient responded steadily without dangerous side effects. Confidence in the new medicine quietly began to grow. Then a real emergency arrived. A young boy named Evan was rushed into the clinic after losing too much blood. The stronger medicines had nearly run out following recent monster attacks. Isel looked toward Jihan's newly crafted potions with quiet determination. She measured the Aurelis potion carefully before giving it to Evan. The bleeding slowed, his breathing steadied, and hope returned to the room. His sister broke into tears of relief as the danger finally passed. In that moment, everyone saw the true value of the work they had begun. Outside the clinic, Lyra quietly wiped away tears she blamed on river dust. Jihan noticed but chose not to embarrass her. She admitted saving a life felt completely different from selling luxury goods. Jihan answered that this was exactly why medicine demanded responsibility above profit. The peaceful moment didn't last long. Celine returned from scouting and reported someone had been watching the healer house since their arrival. Whoever it was had avoided every normal patrol with practiced precision. That wasn't curiosity, it was professional surveillance. Before anyone could investigate further, a young traveler entered the clinic courtyard. She introduced herself as Vera, a scout from the mining settlement of Redstone Hollow. Red dust coated her boots and her worn cloak spoke of a desperate journey. Her first question carried unmistakable urgency. Was Jihan the merchant producing the stable healing vials? Vera finally revealed why she had risked everything to reach Luthmir. Redstone Hollow had been overwhelmed by crystal boars and poisonous ravine insects. The settlement's medicine stores were gone, its roads blocked, and every passing hour meant more lives slipping away. Myril immediately understood the scale of the crisis before anyone else spoke. Jihan knew this wasn't simply another business opportunity. It was a race against time. The decision divided the group for only a moment. Myril warned that their potion supply was limited, while Celine suspected the emergency could easily hide another closed-eye trap. Lyra argued that turning away now would betray everything Aurelis House claimed to stand for. After listening to every opinion, Jihan accepted them all. They would prepare for danger, but they would still answer the call for help. Rhea returned as the rescue mission was being organized and joined the expedition without hesitation. Kale, Celine, Leora, Myril, Lyra, Sora, Vera, and Jihan gathered the emergency supplies while Matron Isel verified every potion. Mira Solon added written authorization so Redstone Hollow's healers could immediately receive the medicine. Within minutes, the rescue mission was ready to depart. At the town gate, another unexpected ally awaited them. A mercenary captain named Jorek claimed he knew the fastest road to Redstone Hollow, for the right price. Jihan paid the guide without argument, but never allowed his guard to drop. Something about the man's confidence felt rehearsed rather than reassuring. The rescue party followed the red stone road winding through dry hills toward the mining settlement. Abandoned carts and broken tools hinted that people had fled in desperate haste. Leora detected lingering poison around the remains of ravine insects, suggesting the attacks had been carefully orchestrated. By then, Jihan no longer believed the monsters were acting on instinct alone. Scouting ahead, Celine and Vera uncovered hidden rope traps and spike boards buried beneath the dust. Vera immediately insisted Redstone's miners would never build such things. Celine reached the same conclusion from another direction. These weren't defensive traps. Someone wanted rescuers to arrive late, or not at all. The answer arrived with a thunderous roar as several level 12 crystal bores burst from behind the rocks. Rhea stepped forward to anchor the front line while Kale circled toward the flank. Rather than charging ahead, Jihan positioned himself between the attackers and the precious medicine wagon. The rescue mission had become a battlefield. Another crystal bore tried to slip around the defenses and strike the wagon directly. Lyra's flare charm blinded it for a critical moment while Miral reorganized the potion crates into a safer formation. Leora secured every vial with reinforced straps before the fighting could scatter them. Even in the middle of battle, protecting the medicine remained their highest priority. Then Jorek revealed the truth. Instead of helping, he turned toward a hidden trail and raised a black feather signal. More monsters began moving as though someone had been waiting for that exact moment. Celine cursed under her breath. Their guide had been leading them into an ambush from the very beginning. Jorek's riders suddenly turned their weapons on the rescue party. He openly admitted that Lord Varric's payment was worth more than the lives of desperate miners. Vera could hardly believe the man her settlement had trusted had sold them out. Jihan's expression grew colder than anyone in the group had ever seen. Closed-eye agents emerged from the surrounding cliffs, completing the trap. Instead of rushing toward Jihan, they surrounded the wagon carrying the new healing potions. Miral understood their objective immediately. They hadn't come to steal a merchant, they had come to erase the proof that Aurelis House could mass-produce medicine. Jihan answered before the enemy could reach the cargo. He quietly opened the infinite space portal behind the wagon while Miral and Leora transferred the real medicine inside. Empty crates and harmless decoys were left in plain sight to fool the attackers. Sora recognized the trick immediately. It was the same strategy that had defeated their enemies back in Luthmir. Jorek charged forward with a heavy axe, hoping to destroy the wagon himself. Rhea met him head-on, her shield stopping the crushing blow with a deafening impact. As dust filled the road, she declared that anyone willing to abandon the wounded had no right to call themselves a captain. The duel became a battle of conviction as much as strength. Meanwhile, Celine and Vera slipped through the rocky terrain together. Vera marked hidden enemies with precise guide arrows while Celine eliminated each threat before poison bolts could be fired. Their movements grew smoother with every exchange. Before long, the ambushers realized they were the ones being hunted. The earth suddenly trembled beneath everyone's feet. From a shattered mine tunnel emerged the true weapon behind the ambush, a level 16 red spine boar king. Its massive crystal-covered back pulsed with the unmistakable influence of closed-eye monster bait. The battle instantly became far more dangerous than anyone had expected. Kale struck first, slowing the beast by cutting into its left leg while Rhea held back its crushing charge. Lyra sacrificed her final flare charm to rob the monster of its vision for a precious instant. Watching carefully, Miral identified the glowing red spine crystal controlling its movements. Jihan knew that weak point would decide everything. At the perfect moment, Jihan opened a portal beneath the monster's front foot, forcing its charge off balance. Celine leapt from a nearby rock and shattered the exposed spine crystal. Without hesitation, Jihan drove his sword through the cracked crimson core. The red spine boar king dissolved into brilliant mana light, ending the battle at last. By sunset, the rescue party finally reached Redstone Hollow with the real medicine safely preserved. As local healers followed Matron Esel's instructions, the first Aurelis potions began saving wounded miners, guards, and children alike. Watching the settlement recover, Jihan received one final message from the system. Second stage progress reached 100%. Morning returned to Redstone Hollow, but this time hope arrived with it. Across the settlement, the first Aurelis healing potions were already giving exhausted families a chance to breathe again. Standing outside the healer's tent, Jihan watched the recovery in silence as the system confirmed his newest achievement. Basic healing potion production had finally become a stable reality rather than a distant goal. As the settlement regained its strength, an older miner approached with slow, deliberate steps. He introduced himself as Halden Rook, the chief responsible for Redstone Hollow. Instead of thanking Jihan for saving a few workers, Halden thanked him for preserving the future of the entire settlement. Those words carried more weight than any reward. While everyone celebrated, Miral focused on the details that would shape the future. Every used potion was matched to a patient, every emergency case separated from future supply records. Leora carefully documented which injuries responded best and where healers were still essential. Together they were building trust one record at a time. Watching Leora work, Jihan realized how far she had come. Only weeks earlier she had questioned every decision she made. Now she confidently guided local apprentices through proper dosage and treatment. Growth like that couldn't be measured by numbers alone. Halden soon proposed something far greater than a simple payment. Redstone Hollow wanted a lasting partnership for medicine and durable Aurelis vials. The mines could offer red crystal ore, mana fragments, and steady trade in return. Jihan agreed to negotiate, but only on fair terms, never by exploiting a community in crisis. Not everyone welcomed that decision. A wealthy investor pushed for exclusive rights to the medicine, hoping to turn desperation into profit. Miral rejected the proposal with a single sentence that silenced the room. When Rhea quietly stepped behind her, even the investor decided the discussion had gone far enough. After the meeting, Jihan thanked Miral for protecting Aurelis House's principles. She teased that someone had to save him from trusting desperate businessmen too easily. Jihan admitted he relied on her to notice the traps he overlooked. Miral lowered her eyes, hiding a smile behind the ledger. Later, Lyra unfolded a large trade map across a supply crate. One by one, she connected Veyron, Luthmere, Glassroot Ravine, Redstone Hollow, and the Capital Road. Looking at the routes together, Jihan realized Aurelis House had quietly become something much larger than a single business. It was becoming a network capable of changing lives across the kingdom. The good news didn't last long. Returning from the cliffs, Celine reported that the closed eye had retreated, but not disappeared. Their movements suggested they were gathering information rather than recovering from defeat. Jihan understood exactly what that meant. Rowan was still studying him. A silver horn suddenly echoed across the settlement. A royal courier rode through the gates beneath the crest of Princess Avellini. She dismounted with practiced precision and asked for Seo Jihan of Aurelis House. The next chapter of their journey had arrived sooner than anyone expected. The courier introduced herself as Mina before presenting a sealed message. Her careful wording immediately caught Jihan's attention. Princess Avellini wished to speak before hostile reports reached the royal court first. Someone was already trying to shape the story against Aurelis House. Mina handed over the sealed letter while Miral verified every official mark. Only after confirming its authenticity did Jihan break the seal. The invitation was direct and impossible to ignore. Princess Avellini requested his appearance at the Royal Inquiry Station near Crown Road Bridge. Mina then revealed what awaited them. Reports accused Jihan of producing unauthorized medicine, manipulating markets, and abusing forbidden spatial artifacts. Although Pavos Drake's name never appeared, Miro recognized his influence in every carefully chosen accusation. Without wasting a moment, she began copying each charge into the evidence ledger. The inquiry itself would be overseen by Royal Inspector Cedric Vale. Known for strict law and absolute discipline, Cedric accepted evidence, not excuses. He intended to examine everything from safety standards to battle reports. Jihan remained calm. Proof had always been Aurelis House's greatest strength. Mina then introduced another ally waiting nearby. Archivist Pyra arrived carrying stacks of carefully protected document cases. She smiled faintly and explained that truth survived best when copied 3 times. Miro immediately recognized someone who valued records as much as she did. Before long, an ordinary storage room became a temporary evidence office. Potion batches, patient records, sabotage reports, healer approvals, and trade logs covered every table. Leora contributed laboratory testing while Lyra organized shipment records. By evening, Aurelis House possessed evidence strong enough to challenge rumor with facts. Later, Mina spoke privately with Jihan. Princess Avellini was interested, but she would never protect someone blindly. If Cedric uncovered illegal medicine or reckless use of spatial power, Aurelis House could face severe restrictions. Jihan answered that he sought allies, not owners. Meanwhile, Sora, Nia, and Nilo gathered rumors throughout Redstone Hollow. Some claimed the potions were brewed from monster blood, while others insisted spirits were trapped inside every bottle. One particularly imaginative story even declared Jihan a prince from another continent. The rumors were absurd, but they proved the closed-eyes misinformation campaign was already spreading. Before leaving Redstone Hollow, the team gathered to decide how they would face the royal inquiry. Miro proposed a public medicine demonstration under royal supervision, believing transparency would defeat every rumor. Leora agreed that healers witnessing the tests firsthand would silence accusations of poison medicine. Celine offered one final reminder. Public truth attracted honest people, but it also attracted assassins. That evening, Jihan watched the sun sink behind the red cliffs as the settlement slowly grew quiet. Miro joined him carrying the completed evidence ledger they had spent days assembling. She admitted her greatest fear wasn't the investigation itself, but losing everything they had built to political power. Jihan answered without hesitation. No court, merchant, or god would decide his future without a fight. For a while, neither of them spoke as the evening wind drifted through the valley. Miro finally confessed that freedom had once felt like a gift someone else had granted her. Now, standing beside Jihan felt like a choice she had made for herself. He listened quietly, understanding those words carried far more weight than any confession. The moment was broken by Sora, who arrived carrying dinner with perfect comedic timing. She froze after sensing the atmosphere, while Miro hurriedly buried herself behind the evidence ledger. Even Jihan found himself awkwardly searching for something to say. The tension dissolved into laughter, reminding everyone they were still a family despite the dangers ahead. Later that night, Lyra found Jihan tightening the wagon straps beneath a lantern's glow. She warned that royal courts often smiled while taking away everything people valued. Jihan asked if those words came from experience with the Ven family. Lyra quietly admitted that merchant houses survived by bending to nobles far too often. Instead of offering another warning, Lyra handed Jihan a formal partnership proposal. It opened the Ven trade network to Aurelis House without demanding ownership in return. She made one thing perfectly clear: this was her own decision, not her family's command. Jihan accepted the agreement with genuine gratitude, knowing trust like that couldn't be bought. High above the settlement, Celine kept watch over the empty road stretching into the distance. When Jihan joined her, she revealed she had intentionally allowed one suspicious watcher to escape. She wanted Rowan to believe he was still controlling the game. Jihan immediately understood there was a deeper reason behind her decision. Celine explained that Rowan would never attack Jihan's strength first. He would target the people, medicine, and responsibilities surrounding him instead. Jihan admitted she was right, even if he hated hearing it aloud. Celine smiled faintly and told him that if he couldn't care less, he would have to become impossible to corner. For the first time in a long while, Celine dropped her usual playful mask. She confessed that being needed frightened her more than being hunted ever had. Jihan gently reminded her that she didn't have to hide every feeling behind another joke. She tapped his forehead with a grin, accusing him of becoming far too perceptive. The following morning, Redstone Hollow gathered to see the expedition off. Halden provided fresh horses, repaired wagons, and an official witness statement for the inquiry. Evan's sister quietly placed a small red stone charm into Jihan's hand as thanks for saving her brother. To Jihan, that simple gift felt more valuable than any noble's applause. Not far from the settlement, a royal patrol intercepted the caravan. Captain Lorne Ash introduced himself as commander of Crown Road Bridge Security. Only after Mina presented Princess Avelini's authority did the tension finally ease. The royal escort joined the journey toward the inquiry station. The road remained peaceful for only a short while. Fen noticed birds fleeing the eastern ridge as Celine caught the brief glint of hidden steel. Rhea immediately tightened the wagon formation without waiting for confirmation. At the same moment, Jihan felt the infinite space portal pulse with an uneasy warning. A barricade blocked the narrow stone pass ahead. Men wearing stolen royal uniforms demanded permission to inspect the medicine and evidence wagons. Captain Lorne recognized the false insignias instantly. The impostors abandoned the disguise and reached for their weapons. The attack began before the first warning had finished echoing. Myrrel seized the evidence ledgers while Lyra scattered duplicate records between separate wagons. Rhea held the road as Kale and Celine struck the attackers from both sides. Nearby, Mina shielded archivist Pyra and the priceless documents entrusted to her. A black crystal orb rolled across the road before activating in a burst of dark light. Captain Rowan Thale's voice echoed from within, offering one final warning. He promised the royal court would watch Jihan's people bleed unless he turned back. Jihan stepped forward in silence, his calm expression revealing far more anger than any shout could. Closed-eye archers answered with burning arrows aimed at the evidence wagons. Jihan opened a rapid chain of portals, redirecting every shot harmlessly into the roadside earth. The smooth precision of each portal reflected how much his power had grown after the second stage breakthrough. Even the attackers hesitated as they watched the impossible unfold. Celine dropped the false guard captain with a spinning kick before finishing the fight with the hilt of her dagger. Kale disarmed two more enemies without taking their lives. Captain Lorne's soldiers captured the surviving agents while Pyra carefully preserved every fake badge as evidence. The ambush had failed, and it had left behind exactly the proof the royal inquiry would need. As the sun disappeared beyond the canyon, Crown Road Bridge finally came into view. Towering royal banners stretched across the massive bridge leading to the inquiry station. Waiting there was Royal Inspector Cedric Vale, surrounded by neatly stacked evidence and unwavering discipline. Crown Road Bridge rose above the canyon like the gateway to a different world. Royal banners snapped in the wind as soldiers and officials prepared for an inquiry that could change Aurelis House forever. Jihan stepped forward with his companions at his back, carrying evidence instead of weapons. Waiting for them was Royal Inspector Cedric Vale, already surrounded by carefully organized accusations. Before the hearing began, the veiled noblewoman finally revealed her identity. Princess Avellini stepped forward, and every guard bowed without hesitation. Jihan offered the respect her station deserved, yet met her gaze with quiet confidence. The princess seemed to appreciate that honesty more than empty ceremony. Cedric opened the first file and allowed the accusations to speak before anyone else could. Unauthorized medicine, suspicious spatial abilities, market disruption, and dangerous combat methods filled the pages. Each charge was presented with cold precision. Miro remained perfectly calm because every allegation already had evidence waiting to answer it. Rather than argue, Jihan welcomed the investigation. He openly admitted that Aurelis House had introduced new medicine and a disruptive business model. What he denied was criminal intent, and he invited every claim to be tested by law instead of rumor. Cedric's expression shifted ever so slightly at the unexpected honesty. Without wasting a moment, Miro placed 3 waterproof ledgers on the inquiry table. One traced every production batch, another documented patients and healer approvals. The final case contained evidence of sabotage stretching from Luthmere to Redstone Hollow. Instead of excuses, Aurelis House answered with records. Piece by piece, the team explained how every potion had been created and tested. Leora presented purity reports while Seris described the stabilizing mana without exposing their deepest secrets. Mina read Matron Esel's testimony before the gathered officials. What had begun as suspicion slowly became a lesson in preparation. Princess Avellini then asked the question no ledger could answer. Why sell medicine at reduced prices when scarcity could have earned a fortune? Jihan replied that desperate people were always easiest to exploit, which was exactly why better systems had to exist first. The princess listened with growing interest. A faint smile crossed Jihan's face as he explained the philosophy behind Aurelis House. Resources had to move like any merchant believed, but broken systems also had to change. If that made him an idealist, he was willing to accept the title. For a brief moment, even the nobles fell silent. The silence ended with the arrival of a familiar red carriage. Merchant Lord Pavo Strake entered surrounded by lawyers, merchants, and carefully prepared witnesses. Cedric showed no reaction, yet the atmosphere immediately grew heavier. Everyone knew the inquiry had just become far more complicated. Pavo argued that Aurelis medicine threatened established trade and should be placed under older licensed houses. His polished words sounded reasonable on the surface. But Jihan heard the true demand hidden beneath them. This wasn't about safety, it was about taking control. Then the tide began to turn. Captain Gregor's report exposed sabotage, false inspections, and warehouse manipulation linked to Strake workers. River Mage Thane confirmed the superiority of Aurelis seal vials, while Mira Solon supported their medical practices. One witness after another quietly dismantled Pavo's claims. The final witness arrived with visible nerves but unwavering resolve. Alchemist Reuven Pell admitted that weakened bottle seals had been part of Strake's business for years. Though Pavo dismissed him as a disgraced apprentice, Cedric accepted the hidden design notes into evidence. The inquiry had become impossible to ignore. Cedric ordered a controlled royal medical demonstration. Independent physicians compared Aurelis potions under identical conditions. The results matched every claim Jihan's team had documented: no miracles, no hidden dangers, only reliable medicine. Truth proved stronger than exaggeration. Princess Avellini studied the findings before speaking. She observed that medicine honest about its limits deserved more trust than impossible promises. Leora finally released the breath she had been holding. Jihan answered her relief with nothing more than a quiet nod. Only one accusation remained truly dangerous. Cedric turned his attention toward Jihan's mysterious spatial ability. Miral's grip tightened around the evidence ledger while Celine subtly adjusted her stance. The inquiry had reached its most delicate moment. Jihan chose honesty once again. He admitted possessing a personal spatial skill bound only to himself, not a stolen artifact. To prove it posed no hidden threat, he offered a limited demonstration under royal supervision. Princess Avellini approved the request immediately. A small blue portal opened above the inquiry table before everyone's eyes. Without touching either tray, Jihan transferred an empty vial from one sealed container to another. The portal vanished almost instantly, leaving only stunned silence behind. Even Cedric could see the ability was controlled rather than reckless. Then, just as the hearing seemed ready to continue, a single black feather drifted onto the table. Celine recognized the danger first and shouted for everyone to move. The feather erupted into dark fire. An instant later, explosions ripped through the far tower of Crown Road Bridge. The peaceful inquiry vanished in an instant as disguised royal guards revealed the armor of the closed eye beneath their cloaks. Crossbow bolts rained toward the evidence, the healer samples, and even Princess Avellini herself. Captain Lorne barked orders while Rhea met the first deadly volley head-on with her shield. The hearing had become a battlefield before anyone could finish another sentence. Chaos spread across the bridge, but everyone already knew their role. Mina rushed Princess Avellini behind cover while Lyra guided officials away from the collapsing edge. Muriel gathered the evidence ledgers, splitting copies into separate bags in case the originals were lost. Meanwhile, Sora, Nia, and Nilo carried messages through the confusion, keeping the defenders connected. From the drifting smoke, Captain Rowan Thale finally stepped onto the shattered bridge. His reforged rune blade pulsed with crimson veins, radiating the influence of the closed eye. Pavo stared in disbelief as he realized the attack had never been meant to protect him. Rowan smiled coldly. The inquiry had simply gathered every important target in one place. Pavo instinctively turned to flee, hoping to escape the disaster he had helped create. A closed-eye agent blocked his path before he had taken more than a few steps. Rowan declared that failed partners became evidence, or corpses. Only then did Pavo understand he had always been disposable. A deafening roar echoed across the canyon, silencing the battle for a heartbeat. From the mist descended a massive iron-wing manticore, its neck pierced by cruel control spikes. The system identified it as a level 17 threat unlike anything they had faced before. The bridge itself suddenly seemed far more fragile than the monster circling above it. Captain Lorne secured Princess Avellini and the civilians behind a disciplined shield wall. Rhea took command of the bridge while Kale and Celine moved to intercept Rowan. That left Jihan alone to stop the manticore before it destroyed the bridge supports. The fate of the inquiry now rested on several battles unfolding at once. The manticore dived straight toward the evidence table, aiming to erase every trace of the truth. Jihan redirected one devastating wing strike through a portal, saving the records at tremendous mana cost. As the beast's tail shattered the stone beneath it, Muriel rescued the final ledger just in time. The evidence survived by only a few desperate seconds. Rowan used the distraction to attack Jihan from the side, but Celine intercepted him without hesitation. Kale joined the duel from the opposite flank, forcing Rowan to divide his attention. Dark binding threads burst from the reforged rune blade, twisting through the air like living chains. Celine answered with a grin, reminding him that obsession had never been a substitute for strategy. Amid the fighting, Pavo made one last desperate attempt to escape. Hidden beneath a supply cart, Nia and Nilo spotted him and shouted his location. Captain Gregor's dock guard seized him before he reached the gate. Pavo begged for mercy, insisting the closed eye had forced every decision he made. Against every warning, Princess Avellini stepped out from cover and took command herself. She ordered the royal archers to target the control spikes instead of the beast's armored body. Her calm authority steadied frightened soldiers who had begun to lose hope. In that moment, Jihan saw not just a princess, but a true leader. The first volley struck the spikes but failed to break them completely. Leora exposed the hidden roots with a flash vial while Lyra blinded the beast's left eye with a flare charm. Using the opening, Jihan portal stepped onto a broken bridge pillar high above the canyon. The decisive moment had finally arrived. Jihan opened a medium portal directly above the manticore's neck. He dropped through it and landed beside the control spikes as the furious beast twisted beneath him. For one terrifying instant, he nearly disappeared over the canyon's edge. Meryl cried out before she even realized she had spoken. Below them, the rest of the battle refused to slow. Rhea and Captain Lorne held the bridge while Celine and Kale kept Rowan away from Jihan. Mina and Pyra evacuated civilians into the western tower as Sora rushed emergency potions to the wounded. Every member of the team fought to protect someone else. With one final strike, Jihan shattered the last control spike. Black mana erupted from the manticore before fading into the wind. For the first time, clarity returned to the creature's eyes. Instead of attacking innocents, it turned its fury against the closed-eye agents controlling it. Realizing his plan was collapsing, Rowan abandoned everyone else and charged directly at Jihan. Their blades collided as the bridge trembled beneath them. Rowan mocked Jihan's compassion, claiming it would always create weaknesses. Jihan answered that people who only searched for weaknesses would never understand why true teams prevailed. The opening came from trust rather than strength alone. Meryl's evidence chain caught Rowan's wrist for the briefest moment while Lyra's flare blinded his rune eye. Celine severed the binding threads from his blade in a single clean strike. Jihan used a portal step to shatter the cracked core of Rowan's sword. The freed manticore crashed onto the bridge, raising a wall of dust between friend and foe. Hidden agents dragged Rowan through an emergency shadow gate before anyone could stop them. He escaped wounded, leaving the remaining attackers to be captured by the royal guards. The Closed Eye had lost the battle, but not its commander. When the dust finally settled, Royal Inspector Cedric signed a provisional license recognizing Aurelis seal vials and basic healing potions. Princess Avellini formally invited Jihan to the capital for the next stage of negotiations and investigation. Standing beside the people who had carried him this far, Jihan looked toward the rising sun beyond Crown Road Bridge.